You have been carrying a fear you rarely speak aloud, the fear of what tomorrow might bring. The fear of endings, failures, disappointments, unknown turns in the road. And yet tonight, for the first time in years, you will rest without that fear. You will sleep, and the future will lose its power to intimidate you. There is a truth most men never learn. The future is not something you walk into, it is something you create. But when fear whispers in your mind, it blinds you to your own creative power. It makes tomorrow look like a threat instead of a canvas. And you have spent too many nights imagining disaster when you should have been imagining destiny. Think of how many evenings you've lain awake replaying worst-case scenarios that never came to pass. How many nights fear painted vivid pictures in your mind, not of what will happen, but of what could go wrong. Those images have drained your energy, your courage, your clarity. They have shaped a relationship with the future built not on faith, but on suspicion. Tonight we rebuild that relationship. Fear of the future does not come from the future itself. It comes from a mind untrained in certainty, a mind that fills the unknown with shadows instead of possibility, a mind that has forgotten that law, not chance, governs outcomes. Yet tonight, as you drift into sleep, I will remind your subconscious of this law. Let me ask you something privately. How many decisions have you delayed because fear told you, not yet? How many opportunities have passed by because the future looked too uncertain? How many dreams have stayed on paper because you were waiting for a sign, a guarantee, a perfect moment? The man who fears tomorrow sacrifices today. But you do not have to live that way. Picture this moment. You wake tomorrow and feel a calm you haven't felt in years. Not because everything is perfect, but because something inside you finally believes you can shape your own tomorrow. Your chest feels lighter, your mind clearer, your next steps obvious. That shift is the result of a subconscious that no longer rehearses fear. As you fall asleep tonight, you will give your mind new instructions, commands that will erase the habit of imagining danger and replace it with the habit of imagining direction. The future is no longer a threat. It becomes territory you will conquer. Fear thrives on vagueness. The more you treat the future as a fog, the more the subconscious fills that fog with danger. But when you plant decisive thoughts, clear images, and strong intentions into the subconscious, the fog lifts. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You have been underestimating your power. You have been living as though tomorrow is something that happens to you, when in truth, tomorrow rises according to the state of mind you fall asleep with. Let me paint a simple scene from your own life. Imagine it is early morning light just cracking through the curtain. You stretch, breathe, and instead of the familiar tightness in your stomach, you feel steadiness. You feel capable. You feel guided. That one breath changes the tone of your entire day. This is the mind of a man who has stopped fearing the unknown. But before I lead you deeper, I must warn you, if you treat these hours lightly, nothing will change. Fear is a habit, and habits resist removal unless you replace them with something stronger. You cannot drift through this message. You must absorb it. You must allow the words to settle more deeply than the fears ever have. Fear of the future has stolen too many years from you already. It has whispered that you are unprepared, unsupported, and alone. But fear is a poor prophet. It predicts nothing accurately except its own survival. And it survives only when you believe its voice. Tonight, that voice will fade. As your conscious mind relaxes and your subconscious opens, you will begin feeding it images of a future you choose, not a future you fear. With each breath, you clear space for new beliefs, that you are capable, that opportunities are forming around you, that tomorrow belongs to you long before you enter it. And when a man believes this deeply, life rearranges itself accordingly. Think of a time when you acted boldly despite uncertainty, when something inside you pulled you forward and things somehow worked out. That was not luck. That was alignment. That was a moment when your identity rose higher than your fear. Imagine living every day from that identity. Tonight, you begin practicing that state. As you listen, you will notice that tension in your body softens because the subconscious cannot hold fear and certainty at the same time. You will feel thoughts of worry loosen like knots untied. You will feel the weight of tomorrow drain out of your chest. These sensations are signs that your mind is releasing the habit of anticipating danger. Fear of the future has convinced you that you must know every outcome before you move. But life is not given to the cautious, it is given to the decisive. When you step forward with faith, conditions align. When you hesitate, they collapse. The future rewards those who move with authority. Tonight you will train your mind to expect good things not out of naivety, but out of law. When a man holds a definite vision, life moves toward that vision. When a man holds fear, life mirrors that fear. Your reality has been echoing the thoughts you repeatedly send into the night. You will send new ones tonight. Picture this. Weeks from now, someone asks why you seem calmer, stronger, more focused. They ask why you make decisions faster, why you pursue things you once avoided. And you will know your relationship with the future changed the night you stopped fearing it and started shaping it. There is a deeper truth you must let in. Fear is not removed by waiting for certainty. Fear is removed by building certainty within yourself. The man who trusts his ability to overcome does not fear what tomorrow holds, and you are becoming that man. So breathe deeply now. Let your shoulders drop. Let the noise of today fade. The future is no longer something to brace yourself against. Tonight, while your body rests, I will speak directly to the mind that shapes your tomorrows, and as these words settle, the fear that once gripped you will begin dissolving not forcefully, but naturally like a fog retreating before the rising sun. Sleep now. Let your future meet the strongest version of you. Fear of the future is not born in tomorrow. It is born in repetition. A man does not fear what is coming because it is dangerous, but because his mind has been trained to imagine danger where no evidence yet exists. This distinction is vital because what is learned through habit can be unlearned through discipline, and what is imagined can be redirected. Most men believe fear arrives uninvited, as though it were a natural response to uncertainty. In truth, fear of the future is cultivated nightly, hour by hour, through uncontrolled imagination. Each time a man lies awake, projecting failure, loss, or disappointment into days that have not yet arrived, he instructs his subconscious to expect disorder. Expectation governs experience. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is rehearsed. It accepts images, feelings, and assumptions as commands. When a man repeatedly imagines tomorrow as threatening, the subconscious accepts that picture and begins arranging perception, emotion, and conduct around it. The future then appears hostile, not because it is, but because the mind has been prepared to meet it that way. This is why fear feels convincing. It has been practiced. Fear of the future is not instinct. It is habit. Habits persist only while they are fed. The moment a man understands this truth, fear loses its authority. It is no longer mysterious. It is no longer overwhelming. It becomes mechanical, something that operates only because it has been allowed to operate. And what operates mechanically can be interrupted mechanically without struggle or drama. The average man believes courage means suppressing fear. This belief is false. Suppression strengthens what it attempts to defeat. Fear dissolves only when replaced. Replacement, not resistance, is the law governing mental change. You are not here to fight fear. You are here to outgrow it. Consider how fear of the future expresses itself. It rarely announces itself boldly. It whispers. It suggests postponement. It urges caution disguised as wisdom. It counsels delay under the appearance of patience. It persuades a man to wait until conditions feel safer, clearer, or more certain. Yet certainty never arrives first. It follows action. Men who shape the future understand this instinctively. They do not move because the path is visible. They move because movement itself clarifies the path. The future responds to motion, not to hesitation. Fear thrives where motion stops. History offers no example of a great achievement preceded by complete certainty. Every man who rose above circumstance stepped forward, while the outcome remained unknown. What separated him from the fearful was not absence of uncertainty, but presence of self-trust. Self-trust is built, not granted. It is built through repetition of directed thought. One of the greatest errors ever taught to men is the belief that fear must be justified before it can be dismissed. Fear does not require justification. It exists only because imagination has been left undisciplined. The imagination, when uncontrolled, becomes the breeding ground of fear. When controlled, it becomes the architect of destiny. The same faculty that creates fear creates confidence. The difference lies in direction. Most men permit imagination to wander at night. They surrender the most powerful hours of mental influence to chance images, worries, and unexamined thoughts. In doing so, they unknowingly train their subconscious to expect adversity. Then they wonder why tomorrow feels heavy before it even begins. This practice ends here. Fear of the future cannot coexist with disciplined imagination. The mind cannot rehearse certainty and catastrophe simultaneously. One displaces the other. When a man begins supplying his subconscious with images of order, direction, and self-command, fear retreats without resistance. Fear does not argue, it withdraws. This is why night matters. Night is when the conscious mind loosens its grip, judgment softens, resistance fades. The subconscious becomes receptive, obedient, and impressionable. Whatever thoughts dominate these hours will shape emotional response, expectation, and conduct in the days that follow. Men who understand this law do not fear the night. They use it. Abraham Lincoln lived through uncertainty that would have broken lesser men. Civil war, national division, personal loss, yet his conduct revealed a mind remarkably steady in the face of the unknown. He did not possess certainty of outcome, he possessed certainty of purpose. That certainty anchored his imagination and prevented fear from ruling his judgment. Purpose stabilizes the future. A man without purpose fills the unknown with fear. A man with purpose fills it with direction. Direction gives the mind something to move toward. Fear arises when the mind has nowhere to go. It circles uncertainty endlessly, mistaking motion for progress. But circular thought produces only fatigue. Directed thought produces power. When a man begins to see the future as territory rather than threat, his relationship with time changes. Tomorrow no longer appears as something to endure. It becomes something to shape. This shift does not require optimism. It requires authority over one's own thinking. Authority begins with recognition. Recognize this. Every fearful image you have ever held of the future was created in the present. It did not arrive from tomorrow. It was manufactured now. And if it can be manufactured, it can be replaced. Replacement does not require force. It requires persistence. Persistence is calm repetition. Fear weakens most men, not because it is powerful, but because it is familiar. Familiarity creates acceptance, and acceptance creates obedience. A man obeys the thoughts he entertains most often, especially when his conscious guard is lowered. For years, fear of the future has been entertained without question, until it began to feel reasonable. Reasonable fear is the most dangerous kind. It does not alarm the mind, it persuades it. The persuasion usually begins with the belief that one must prepare for disappointment. Men tell themselves they are being sensible when they imagine loss, failure, or hardship ahead of time. They believe that by expecting difficulty, they will somehow soften its blow. This belief is false. Anticipated pain is lived twice. Most imagined futures never occur, yet the damage caused by imagining them is always real. Fear of the future drains strength in advance. It spends energy today on events that may never happen tomorrow. This habit leaves the mind exhausted before action is even required. The disciplined mind conserves strength. The undisciplined mind wastes it on shadows. A man who trains his mind properly does not deny the existence of difficulty. He denies difficulty the right to dominate his imagination. Strength does not mean blindness. It means selectivity. Selectivity of thought is power. From this night forward, the future no longer stands as an enemy to be watched. It becomes material to be shaped. Fear loses its position of authority when a man realizes that tomorrow responds to the thoughts he consistently supplies today. This realization marks the true beginning. Rest now in this understanding. Fear of the future has lost its mystery. It survives only where it is rehearsed. You have begun rehearsing something stronger. One of the most persistent illusions fear plants in the human mind is the belief that certainty must arrive before movement. This belief appears sensible, even wise, yet it has quietly destroyed more initiative than ignorance ever could. Men wait for assurance, and while they wait, opportunity passes, confidence weakens, and fear strengthens its hold. Certainty is not the cause of action. Action is the cause of certainty. This law operates without exception. A man who waits to feel ready before he moves will wait his entire life. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a condition produced through motion. The mind gains confidence not by standing still, but by proving to itself that it can respond effectively while in motion. Fear thrives in stillness. Movement dissolves it. The future appears frightening only to those who believe they must understand it before entering. This belief places an impossible burden upon the mind. Life was never designed to be entered with full knowledge. It was designed to be navigated through judgment, correction, and persistence. Judgment improves with use. Fear prevents use. When a man delays action in order to gain certainty, he trains his subconscious to associate uncertainty with danger. Each delay reinforces the belief that the unknown must be avoided. Over time, avoidance becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. Identity formed this way produces chronic fear of tomorrow. This identity is now being dismantled. The men who have shaped history did not possess advance guarantees. They possessed decisiveness. Decisiveness is not recklessness. It is the willingness to act upon the best information available and to adjust as facts unfold. Adjustment is a strength, not a weakness. Fear mistakes adjustment for failure. Wisdom recognizes it as progress. Theodore Roosevelt stepped into leadership during moments of uncertainty that frightened his peers. He did not wait for conditions to become ideal. He believed that decisive movement created its own conditions. This belief freed him from the paralysis that fear imposed on others. Decisiveness clarifies the future. Hesitation clouds it. When action is postponed, imagination fills the void. The imagination, left idle, drifts toward danger. It magnifies risk, exaggerates consequence, and invents obstacles. This is not foresight. It is misdirected imagination. Directed imagination requires action. Action gives imagination material. Without action, imagination turns inward and feeds fear. This is why men who act boldly often feel calmer than those who hesitate endlessly. Calm does not come from safety. It comes from engagement. Engagement reassures the subconscious that life is being met rather than avoided. Avoidance breeds anxiety. Engagement dissolves it. You have been taught, perhaps unknowingly, to treat uncertainty as a warning. In truth, uncertainty is a signal to apply judgment, not retreat. Judgment grows only through use. A man who refuses to act until certainty arrives deprives himself of the very experience that would produce certainty. This deprivation feeds fear. Fear feeds further delay. The cycle continues until interrupted. Tonight, the interruption begins. From this point forward, you are no longer waiting for confidence to arrive before acting. You are allowing confidence to be produced by action itself. This reversal changes the entire relationship between you and the future. The future no longer stands as a question demanding an answer before you move. It becomes a process you enter with readiness. Readiness is not Certainty. Readiness is willingness. Willingness neutralizes fear. Fear of the future persists only where unwillingness remains. Unwillingness disguises itself as caution, but its true source is mistrust of self. When a man does not trust his ability to respond, he demands guarantees from life. Life does not provide guarantees. It provides opportunities to respond. You are learning to trust your response. This trust does not arrive suddenly. It grows as you observe yourself acting competently despite uncertainty. Each time you move forward without full assurance and survive the experience, you have been carrying a fear you rarely speak aloud, the fear of what tomorrow might bring. The fear of endings, failures, disappointments, unknown turns in the road. And yet tonight, for the first time in years, you will rest without that fear. You will sleep, and the future will lose its power to intimidate you. There is a truth most men never learn. The future is not something you walk into, it is something you create. But when fear whispers in your mind, it blinds you to your own creative power. It makes tomorrow look like a threat instead of a canvas. And you have spent too many nights imagining disaster when you should have been imagining destiny. Think of how many evenings you've lain awake replaying worst-case scenarios that never came to pass. How many nights fear painted vivid pictures in your mind, not of what will happen, but of what could go wrong. Those images have drained your energy, your courage, your clarity. They have shaped a relationship with the future built not on faith, but on suspicion. Tonight we rebuild that relationship. Fear of the future does not come from the future itself. It comes from a mind untrained in certainty, a mind that fills the unknown with shadows instead of possibility, a mind that has forgotten that law, not chance, governs outcomes. Yet tonight, as you drift into sleep, I will remind your subconscious of this law. Let me ask you something privately. How many decisions have you delayed because fear told you, not yet? How many opportunities have passed by because the future looked too uncertain? How many dreams have stayed on paper because you were waiting for a sign, a guarantee, a perfect moment? The man who fears tomorrow sacrifices today. But you do not have to live that way. Picture this moment. You wake tomorrow and feel a calm you haven't felt in years. Not because everything is perfect, but because something inside you finally believes you can shape your own tomorrow. Your chest feels lighter, your mind clearer, your next steps obvious. That shift is the result of a subconscious that no longer rehearses fear. As you fall asleep tonight, you will give your mind new instructions, commands that will erase the habit of imagining danger and replace it with the habit of imagining direction. The future is no longer a threat. It becomes territory you will conquer. Fear thrives on vagueness. The more you treat the future as a fog, the more the subconscious fills that fog with danger. But when you plant decisive thoughts, clear images, and strong intentions into the subconscious, the fog lifts. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You have been underestimating your power. You have been living as though tomorrow is something that happens to you, when in truth, tomorrow rises according to the state of mind you fall asleep with. Let me paint a simple scene from your own life. Imagine it is early morning light just cracking through the curtain. You stretch, breathe, and instead of the familiar tightness in your stomach, you feel steadiness. You feel capable. You feel guided. That one breath changes the tone of your entire day. This is the mind of a man who has stopped fearing the unknown. But before I lead you deeper, I must warn you, if you treat these hours lightly, nothing will change. Fear is a habit, and habits resist removal unless you replace them with something stronger. You cannot drift through this message. You must absorb it. You must allow the words to settle more deeply than the fears ever have. Fear of the future has stolen too many years from you already. It has whispered that you are unprepared, unsupported, and alone. But fear is a poor prophet. It predicts nothing accurately except its own survival. And it survives only when you believe its voice. Tonight, that voice will fade. As your conscious mind relaxes and your subconscious opens, you will begin feeding it images of a future you choose, not a future you fear. With each breath, You clear space for new beliefs, that you are capable, that opportunities are forming around you, that tomorrow belongs to you long before you enter it. And when a man believes this deeply, life rearranges itself accordingly. Think of a time when you acted boldly despite uncertainty, when something inside you pulled you forward and things somehow worked out. That was not luck, that was alignment. That was a moment when your identity rose higher than your fear. Imagine living every day from that identity. Tonight, you begin practicing that state. As you listen, you will notice that tension in your body softens because the subconscious cannot hold fear and certainty at the same time. You will feel thoughts of worry loosen like knots untied. You will feel the weight of tomorrow drain out of your chest. These sensations are signs that your mind is releasing the habit of anticipating danger. Fear of the future has convinced you that you must know every outcome before you move. But life is not given to the cautious, it is given to the decisive. When you step forward with faith, conditions align. When you hesitate, they collapse. The future rewards those who move with authority. Tonight you will train your mind to expect good things not out of naivety, but out of law. When a man holds a definite vision, life moves toward that vision. When a man holds fear, life mirrors that fear. Your reality has been echoing the thoughts you repeatedly send into the night. You will send new ones tonight. Picture this. Weeks from now, someone asks why you seem calmer, stronger, more focused. They ask why you make decisions faster, why you pursue things you once avoided. And you will know your relationship with the future changed the night you stopped fearing it and started shaping it. There is a deeper truth you must let in. Fear is not removed by waiting for certainty. Fear is removed by building certainty within yourself. The man who trusts his ability to overcome does not fear what tomorrow holds, and you are becoming that man. So breathe deeply now. Let your shoulders drop. Let the noise of today fade. The future is no longer something to brace yourself against. Tonight, while your body rests, I will speak directly to the mind that shapes your tomorrows. And as these words settle, the fear that once gripped you will begin dissolving not forcefully, but naturally like a fog retreating before the rising sun. Sleep now. Let your future meet the strongest version of you. Fear of the future is not born in tomorrow. It is born in repetition. A man does not fear what is coming because it is dangerous, but because his mind has been trained to imagine danger where no evidence yet exists. This distinction is vital because what is learned through habit can be unlearned through discipline, and what is imagined can be redirected. Most men believe fear arrives uninvited, as though it were a natural response to uncertainty. In truth, fear of the future is cultivated nightly, hour by hour, through uncontrolled imagination. Each time a man lies awake projecting failure, loss, or disappointment into days that have not yet arrived, he instructs his subconscious to expect disorder. Expectation governs experience. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is rehearsed. It accepts images, feelings, and assumptions as commands. When a man repeatedly imagines tomorrow as threatening, the subconscious accepts that picture and begins arranging perception, emotion, and conduct around it. The future then appears hostile, not because it is, but because the mind has been prepared to meet it that way. This is why fear feels convincing. It has been practiced. Fear of the future is not instinct. It is habit. Habits persist only while they are fed. The moment a man understands this truth, fear loses its authority. It is no longer mysterious. It is no longer overwhelming. It becomes mechanical, something that operates only because it has been allowed to operate. And what operates mechanically can be interrupted mechanically without struggle or drama. The average man believes courage means suppressing fear. This belief is false. Suppression strengthens what it attempts to defeat. Fear dissolves only when replaced. Replacement, not resistance, is the law governing mental change. You are not here to fight fear. You are here to outgrow it. Consider how fear of the future expresses itself. It rarely announces itself boldly. It whispers. It suggests postponement. It urges caution disguised as wisdom. It counsels delay under the appearance of patience. It persuades a man to wait until conditions feel safer, clearer, or more certain. Yet certainty never arrives first. It follows action. Men who shape the future understand this instinctively. They do not move because the path is visible. They move because movement itself clarifies the path. The future responds to motion, not to hesitation. Fear thrives where motion stops. History offers no example of a great achievement preceded by complete certainty. Every man who rose above circumstance stepped forward, while the outcome remained unknown. What separated him from the fearful was not absence of uncertainty, but presence of self-trust. Self-trust is built, not granted. It is built through repetition of directed thought. One of the greatest errors ever taught to men is the belief that fear must be justified before it can be dismissed. Fear does not require justification. It exists only because imagination has been left undisciplined. The imagination, when uncontrolled, becomes the breeding ground of fear. When controlled, it becomes the architect of destiny. The same faculty that creates fear creates confidence. The difference lies in direction. Most men permit imagination to wander at night. They surrender the most powerful hours of mental influence to chance images, worries, and unexamined thoughts. In doing so, they unknowingly train their subconscious to expect adversity. Then they wonder why tomorrow feels heavy before it even begins. This practice ends here. Fear of the future cannot coexist with disciplined imagination. The mind cannot rehearse certainty and catastrophe simultaneously. One displaces the other. When a man begins supplying his subconscious with images of order, direction, and self-command, fear retreats without resistance. Fear does not argue. It withdraws. This is why night matters. Night is when the conscious mind loosens its grip, judgment softens, resistance fades. The subconscious becomes receptive, obedient, and impressionable. Whatever thoughts dominate these hours will shape emotional response, expectation, and conduct in the days that follow. Men who understand this law do not fear the night. They use it. Abraham Lincoln lived through uncertainty that would have broken lesser men. Civil war, national division, personal loss, yet his conduct revealed a mind remarkably steady in the face of the unknown. He did not possess certainty of outcome, he possessed certainty of purpose. That certainty anchored his imagination and prevented fear from ruling his judgment. Purpose stabilizes the future. A man without purpose fills the unknown with fear. A man with purpose fills it with direction. Direction gives the mind something to move toward. Fear arises when the mind has nowhere to go. It circles uncertainty endlessly, mistaking motion for progress. But circular thought produces only fatigue. Directed thought produces power. When a man begins to see the future as territory rather than threat, his relationship with time changes. Tomorrow no longer appears as something to endure. It becomes something to shape. This shift does not require optimism. It requires authority over one's own thinking. Authority begins with recognition. Recognize this. Every fearful image you have ever held of the future was created in the present. It did not arrive from tomorrow. It was manufactured now. And if it can be manufactured, it can be replaced. Replacement does not require force. It requires persistence. Persistence is calm repetition. Fear weakens most men, not because it is powerful, but because it is familiar. Familiarity creates acceptance, and acceptance creates obedience. A man obeys the thoughts he entertains most often, especially when his conscious guard is lowered. For years, fear of the future has been entertained without question, until it began to feel reasonable. Reasonable fear is the most dangerous kind. It does not alarm the mind. It persuades it. The persuasion usually begins with the belief that one must prepare for disappointment. Men tell themselves they are being sensible when they imagine loss, failure, or hardship ahead of time. They believe that by expecting difficulty, they will somehow soften its blow. This belief is false. Anticipated pain is lived twice. Most imagined futures never occur, yet the damage caused by imagining them is always real. Fear of the future drains strength in advance. It spends energy today on events that may never happen tomorrow. This habit leaves the mind exhausted before action is even required. The disciplined mind conserves strength. The undisciplined mind wastes it on shadows. A man who trains his mind properly does not deny the existence of difficulty. He denies difficulty the right to dominate his imagination. Strength does not mean blindness. It means selectivity. Selectivity of thought is power. From this night forward, the future no longer stands as an enemy to be watched. It becomes material to be shaped. Fear loses its position of authority when a man realizes that tomorrow responds to the thoughts he consistently supplies today. This realization marks the true beginning. Rest now in this understanding. Fear of the future has lost its mystery. It survives only where it is rehearsed. You have begun rehearsing something stronger. One of the most persistent illusions fear plants in the human mind is the belief that certainty must arrive before movement. This belief appears sensible, even wise, yet it has quietly destroyed more initiative than ignorance ever could. Men wait for assurance, and while they wait, opportunity passes, confidence weakens, and fear strengthens its hold. Certainty is not the cause of action. Action is the cause of certainty. This law operates without exception. A man who waits to feel ready before he moves will wait his entire life. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a condition produced through motion. The mind gains confidence not by standing still, but by proving to itself that it can respond effectively while in motion. Fear thrives in stillness. Movement dissolves it. The future appears frightening only to those who believe they must understand it before entering. This belief places an impossible burden upon the mind. Life was never designed to be entered with full knowledge. It was designed to be navigated through judgment, correction, and persistence. Judgment improves with use. Fear prevents use. When a man delays action in order to gain certainty, he trains his subconscious to associate uncertainty with danger. Each delay reinforces the belief that the unknown must be avoided. Over time, avoidance becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. Identity formed this way produces chronic fear of tomorrow. This identity is now being dismantled. The men who have shaped history did not possess advance guarantees. They possessed decisiveness. Decisiveness is not recklessness. It is the willingness to act upon the best information available and to adjust as facts unfold. Adjustment is a strength, not a weakness. Fear mistakes adjustment for failure. Wisdom recognizes it as progress. Theodore Roosevelt stepped into leadership during moments of uncertainty that frightened his peers. He did not wait for conditions to become ideal. He believed that decisive movement created its own conditions. This belief freed him from the paralysis that fear imposed on others. Decisiveness clarifies the future. Hesitation clouds it. When action is postponed, imagination fills the void. The imagination, left idle, drifts toward danger. It magnifies risk, exaggerates consequence, and invents obstacles. This is not foresight. It is misdirected imagination. Directed imagination requires action. Action gives imagination material. Without action, imagination turns inward and feeds fear. This is why men who act boldly often feel calmer than those who hesitate endlessly. Calm does not come from safety. It comes from engagement. Engagement reassures the subconscious that life is being met rather than avoided. Avoidance breeds anxiety. Engagement dissolves it. You have been taught, perhaps unknowingly, to treat uncertainty as a warning. In truth, uncertainty is a signal to apply judgment, not retreat. Judgment grows only through use. A man who refuses to act until certainty arrives deprives himself of the very experience that would produce certainty. This deprivation feeds fear. Fear feeds further delay. The cycle continues until interrupted. Tonight, the interruption begins. From this point forward, you are no longer waiting for confidence to arrive before acting. You are allowing confidence to be produced by action itself. This reversal changes the entire relationship between you and the future. The future no longer stands as a question demanding an answer before you move. It becomes a process you enter with readiness. Readiness is not certainty. Readiness is willingness. Willingness neutralizes fear. Fear of the future persists only where unwillingness remains. Unwillingness disguises itself as caution, but its true source is mistrust of self. When a man does not trust his ability to respond, he demands guarantees from life. Life does not provide guarantees. It provides opportunities to respond. You are learning to trust your response. This trust does not arrive suddenly. It grows as you observe yourself acting competently despite uncertainty. Each time you move forward without full assurance and survive the experience, fear weakens. Each time you delay, fear strengthens. You are choosing strengthening. As this choice becomes habitual, the future loses its sharpness. It no longer appears as a single, overwhelming unknown. It becomes a series of decisions, each manageable in its own moment. Manageability dissolves intimidation. Intimidation feeds fear. A man who understands this law no longer seeks comfort before action. Comfort follows action. Movement produces reassurance. Stillness produces doubt. This is why those who hesitate feel restless, while those who act feel settled. Even amid risk, settlement comes from alignment. Alignment occurs when intention and action move together. Fear fractures alignment. You are restoring it. Others will begin to notice this change. They will observe that you no longer delay decisions unnecessarily. You speak with more firmness, not because you are certain of outcomes, but because you are certain of your willingness to proceed. This willingness communicates strength more effectively than any display of confidence. Strength rooted in willingness is durable. Fear cannot penetrate it. From this night forward, the future will no longer demand explanation before you move. You will no longer negotiate endlessly with yourself. Decision will replace debate. Action will replace anticipation. Anticipation consumed energy without producing results. Action produces results. Results reinforce belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity governs destiny. This sequence is now. Active. Rest in this understanding. Certainty does not come first. It follows, and you are learning how to lead it. Fear of the future survives only where the mind believes that life is governed by accident. When a man imagines tomorrow as a random force capable of harming him without cause, he surrenders authority over his destiny. This surrender is the birthplace of anxiety. Lawlessness in thought always produces fear. Law restores order. Order dissolves fear. The universe does not operate by whim. It operates by cause and effect. Every condition, favorable or adverse, proceeds from preceding causes. Men who understand this law cease fearing outcomes because they know outcomes can be influenced. Men who ignore it live as though life were a gamble. Fear belongs to gamblers. Confidence belongs to planners. The future terrifies only those who believe it cannot be influenced. Once a man understands that tomorrow responds to the thoughts, habits, and decisions of today, fear loses its foundation. The future ceases to be an enemy and becomes a consequence. Consequences can be shaped. Fear imagines consequences without cause. This misunderstanding has imprisoned millions of men. Most men fear tomorrow because they believe it may bring punishment they did not earn. This belief is false. The future does not punish. It reflects. It reflects the dominant thoughts a man impresses upon his subconscious and the actions those thoughts inspire. Reflection is law. Punishment is superstition. Superstition breeds fear. When a man replaces superstition with 12, understanding, Fear weakens. Understanding introduces order into imagination. Instead of seeing tomorrow as chaos, the mind begins to see it as structure unfolding. Structure calms the mind. Calm permits judgment. Judgment produces right action. This chain cannot be broken when law is recognized. Men who rise above fear always possess one trait in common. They believe life responds to principle, not chance. Whether they articulate this belief or not, they operate from it. They act as though effort matters, thought matters, and persistence matters, and they are correct. Napoleon Bonaparte did not conquer half of Europe because he trusted fortune. He trusted order. He believed that preparation, decision, and timing produced predictable results. His confidence did not arise from certainty of victory, but from certainty of method. Method replaces fear. Fear thrives where method is absent. The man who understands law does not demand guarantees from life. He supplies causes and expects effects. He knows that repetition strengthens influence and that disorder invites failure. This knowledge removes anxiety because it replaces helplessness with responsibility. Responsibility empowers. Helplessness frightens. Fear of the future is fear of being acted upon rather than acting. It is the fear of being subject to forces one cannot influence. Once a man accepts responsibility for shaping his future, fear retreats. Responsibility does not burden the strong, it frees them. When responsibility is accepted, imagination no longer wanders into catastrophe. It becomes practical. It asks not, what if disaster comes, but what cause am I setting in motion? This question alone changes the direction of thought. Thought directed by cause is productive. Thought directed by fear is wasteful. You are learning to direct thought by cause. As this learning continues, the future becomes less vague. Vagueness feeds fear. Precision calms it. Precision does not require knowing everything. It requires knowing what you control. You control thought. You control decision. You control persistence. These are sufficient. A man who understands this does not fear uncertainty. He recognizes uncertainty as raw material. Raw material becomes useful when shaped by method. Fear dissolves when uncertainty is treated as opportunity rather than threat. Opportunity requires courage. Courage grows from understanding. Understanding replaces superstition. For years, fear has whispered that tomorrow may undo you. That whisper assumed power without proof. Tonight, that assumption is being challenged. The future has never undone a man who respected law. It has undone only those who ignored it. Ignorance invites fear. Knowledge invites confidence. This knowledge is not academic. It is practical. It instructs you to plant causes today that must produce effects tomorrow. It assures you that persistence multiplies influence and that disciplined thought cannot fail. When applied consistently, consistency is law in motion. Inconsistency feeds fear. Fear thrives where effort is scattered. Focus restores order. As focus increases, imagination ceases to invent threats. It begins to invent plans. Plans do not guarantee outcomes, but they guarantee direction. Direction reassures the subconscious that progress is occurring. Progress quiets fear. Fear survives only where stagnation remains. Stagnation has ended. You are learning to meet the future with method instead of emotion. Emotion exaggerates danger. Method neutralizes it. The man who applies method does not panic. He adjusts. Adjustment is the highest form of intelligence. Intelligence does not fear correction. It welcomes it. Correction improves outcome. Fear resists correction. This resistance keeps men trapped. You are leaving that condition behind. As law replaces superstition, fear fades naturally. It does not need to be argued away. It loses relevance. It cannot survive in a mind governed by cause and effect. The future is no longer mysterious. It is orderly. It responds. It reflects. It obeys law. And you are learning to apply that law. Rest now in this understanding. Fear of the future dissolves where law is recognized. and recognition has begun. When law is recognized, imagination ceases to wander into chaos. It becomes disciplined, purposeful, and constructive. The disciplined imagination does not ask what might happen at random. It asks what must follow from the causes now being set in motion. This shift alone removes the sharp edge from the future. Sharpness belongs to surprise. Law eliminates surprise. Surprise is what frightens men. It suggests vulnerability. It implies that forces beyond control may strike without warning. Yet surprise exists only where preparation is absent. Preparation does not require foresight of events. It requires foresight of response. Response guided by law is reliable. Reliability calms the mind. A man who understands cause and effect does not fear unknown conditions. He knows that whatever condition arises will be met with judgment rather than panic. Judgment, unlike panic, improves with experience. Every experience handled calmly increases the mind's confidence in itself. Confidence born of experience is unshakable. It does not depend on hope. Hope is passive. Law is active. Men who trust law do not sit idle waiting for signs. They supply causes. They think deliberately, decide firmly, and persist steadily. The effects follow as surely as night follows day. This certainty removes the need to imagine disaster. Disaster is the product of disorder. Order prevents it. Fear of the future thrives where disorder reigns in thought. Disordered thought jumps from possibility to possibility without structure. It exaggerates threats and ignores probability. Law imposes structure upon thought. It asks the mind to consider sequence rather than spectacle. Spectacle excites fear. Sequence restores calm. You are learning to think in sequence. Sequence breaks the future into steps rather than masses. A mass intimidates. A step invites movement. Movement reassures the subconscious that life is being engaged rather than endured. Endurance exhausts. Engagement strengthens. This is why men who act methodically feel less fear than those who merely endure uncertainty. Method replaces imagination with procedure. Procedure removes emotion from decision. Emotion magnifies fear. Procedure neutralizes it. Neutrality is power. Power does not tremble before tomorrow. Fear of the future often disguises itself as humility. Men say they fear tomorrow because they acknowledge their limitations. This humility is false. True humility recognizes law and submits to it. False humility submits to fear. Fear is not wisdom. It is ignorance repeated. When a man learns that tomorrow responds to today's causes, he ceases fearing limitation. Limitation becomes a problem to solve rather than a fate to suffer. Problems invite method. Fate invites resignation. Resignation feeds fear. Method feeds confidence. The future now appears less like fate and more like consequence. Consequence can be influenced. Influence restores authority. Authority removes fear. Authority over self is enough. The man who governs his thought governs his action. The man who governs his action governs his destiny. Destiny is not a gift bestowed. It is a condition produced. Produced conditions are predictable. Predictability calms the mind. As this understanding settles, you may notice that your imagination becomes quieter. It no longer rushes ahead inventing endings. It remains closer to the present, attending to causes rather than consequences. This shift reduces anxiety without effort. Effort was never the cure. Understanding was. Understanding introduces order. Order governs habit force. Habit force preserves whatever order is repeated. You are repeating order now. The future responds to repetition more than to intensity. A single emotional night of confidence cannot overcome years of fearful rehearsal. But steady nights of disciplined thought will erase fear completely. Consistency always wins. Fear depends on inconsistency. You are becoming consistent. As consistency increases, the future feels less threatening because it no longer feels separate from you. It feels connected to what you are doing now. This connection dissolves helplessness. Helplessness is the soil in which fear grows. Connection restores agency. Agency empowers. Empowered men do not fear tomorrow. They prepare for it. Preparation of mind is the highest form of preparation. It equips a man to adjust to whatever arises. Adjustment is the proof of intelligence. Fear resists adjustment because it fears being wrong. Fear is attached to illusion. Law is attached to truth. Truth does not threaten. It guides. You are learning to trust guidance rather than prediction. Guidance operates moment by moment. Prediction attempts to leap ahead. Leapfrogging the present produces anxiety. Remaining present produces strength. Strength applied daily reshapes life. Life reshaped obeys law. Law does not punish, it responds. The future is responding now to the changes occurring in your thought. It is becoming less vague, less hostile, less intimidating. It is beginning to appear as territory you will enter with preparation rather than dread. Dread dissolves where law rules. This understanding is not temporary, it is structural. Once a man understands that the future is governed by principle, he cannot return to superstition without effort. Superstition loses its hold. Fear fades with it. You are no longer facing tomorrow blindly. You are approaching it lawfully, and law does not fail. When law replaces chance in the mind, fear loses its final refuge. Fear depends upon unpredictability. It feeds upon the belief that forces may arise without reason and without remedy. Law denies this belief entirely. Law declares that nothing comes without cause and nothing persists without repetition. Repetition is power. Fear was repeated. It can be unrepeated. Men often imagine that fear fades when circumstances improve. This is another illusion. Circumstances do not remove fear. Understanding removes it. A man who believes tomorrow is governed by law will remain calm even when conditions appear unstable, because he knows instability is temporary and responsive. Response is always possible. This knowledge steadies the mind. The future ceases to feel like an approaching wave that may overwhelm. It begins to feel like water that can be entered, tested, and crossed step by step. This change in perception removes panic. Panic arises only when the mind imagines total loss of control. Control of self is never lost, only belief in it fades. You are restoring that belief now. When a man understands that cause precedes effect, he ceases asking, "What if something goes wrong?" and begins asking, "What must I do next?" This question is productive. It moves thought from fear to function. Function displaces imagination. Imagination without direction breeds fear. Imagination under law produces order. Order reassures the subconscious that life is not hostile. Hostility is a projection of disorder within the mind. When thought becomes orderly, the world appears manageable. Manageability dissolves dread. Dread is fear magnified by vagueness. Vagueness retreats before clarity. Clarity does not require full knowledge. It requires correct orientation. Orientation toward cause gives the mind footing. A man with footing does not panic. Panic belongs to those who feel suspended over uncertainty. You are planting your feet. Each time you remind yourself that tomorrow reflects what is being impressed upon the mind today, you weaken fear's authority. Fear depends upon forgetting this truth. It thrives when men imagine that the future arrives independently of their conduct. This imagination is false. The future is obedient. It obeys dominant thought. Dominant thought becomes habit. Habit becomes character. Character shapes destiny. This progression is unbreakable. Once a man accepts this, fear appears unreasonable. It no longer masquerades as wisdom. It reveals itself as neglect of law. Neglect is corrected through discipline, not emotion. Discipline does not excite. It stabilizes. Stability calms the mind. As stability increases, the mind no longer leaps ahead inventing threats. It remains closer to the present, evaluating what is real and what is imagined. Fear cannot survive under evaluation. It thrives only when unexamined. Examination dissolves illusion. Illusion feeds fear. This examination is now occurring naturally. You are no longer required to convince yourself that tomorrow will be favorable. Favorable outcomes are not guaranteed. What is guaranteed is response to cause. This understanding removes disappointment because expectation is placed where it belongs upon effort, not chance. Effort guided by law is never wasted. Even failure becomes instruction. Instruction strengthens judgment. Judgment reduces fear. Fear weakens where learning replaces avoidance. Avoidance once felt protective. It was not. It merely delayed growth. Growth produces confidence. Confidence stabilizes identity. Identity no longer trembles before uncertainty. You are reaching that condition. The future now feels less like a verdict and more like an unfolding process. Processes can be guided, verdicts cannot. This distinction alone dissolves much of the fear you once felt. Processes respond to persistence. Persistence does not require certainty. It requires commitment. Commitment anchors the mind. An anchored mind does not drift into fear. Fear thrives in drift. Drift has ended. You are learning to think as a man who shapes outcomes rather than awaits them. This shift changes the emotional climate of the mind. Anxiety gives way to attentiveness. Attentiveness is calm. Calm sharpens perception. Perception improves choice. Choice shapes action. Action produces consequence. Consequence follows law. Law does not surprise. As this understanding deepens, sleep becomes easier. The mind no longer races ahead, attempting to solve tomorrow. It rests, knowing that tomorrow will respond to the causes being set now. Rest restores strength. Strength prepares response. Response dissolves fear. This is the quiet power you are installing. Fear of the future cannot coexist with belief in law. The two are incompatible. One rests upon superstition, the other upon understanding. Understanding always prevails when allowed to remain. You are allowing it now. The future is no longer unknown in the way it once seemed. It is lawful. It is responsive. It is waiting. And you are learning how to meet it without fear. When a man finally accepts that the future answers to law, not mood, not chance, and not fortune, his inner world becomes ordered. Disorder once made the future appear dangerous. Order reveals it as manageable. The mind calms when it understands that nothing approaches it without cause, and nothing endures without cooperation. Cooperation with law is power. Fear is refusal to cooperate. The future does not ask permission to arrive, but it does respond to preparation. Preparation does not mean predicting events. It means shaping the mind so that it remains steady, observant, and decisive under all conditions. This preparation is sufficient because conditions may change, but character responds consistently. Character is the anchor. Anchors prevent drift. Drift always magnifies fear. Men who fear tomorrow imagine themselves at the mercy of events. Men who trust law imagine themselves as participants. Participation restores dignity. Dignity removes panic. Panic belongs only to those who feel acted upon. You are no longer being acted upon. You are acting. This shift alters how the subconscious interprets uncertainty. What once appeared as threat now appears as material. Material does not frighten the craftsman. He shapes it. The future is material to the man who understands law. Shaping requires method. Method replaces emotion. Emotion exaggerates danger. Method neutralizes it. As this neutralization occurs, you may notice that worry thoughts arise less often. When they do arise, they lack urgency. They appear distant, almost unfamiliar. This is a sign that the subconscious is no longer rehearsing fear automatically. Automatic fear has been interrupted. Interruption weakens habit. Habit loses strength without repetition. Fear depends on repetition. You have withdrawn repetition. Each night you supply order instead. Order accumulates. Accumulation stabilizes belief. Belief governs expectation. Expectation shapes conduct. Conduct determines consequence. This progression cannot fail. Fear of the future also dissolves when a man understands that adversity is not an enemy but a signal. Signals inform. Enemies threaten. The fearful man sees threat where the prepared man sees information. Information invites adjustment. Adjustment is intelligence in motion. Intelligence does not fear correction. Correction improves outcome. Outcome reinforces confidence. Confidence dissolves fear. You are learning to interpret events accurately rather than emotionally. Accuracy removes exaggeration. Exaggeration feeds fear. When thought becomes accurate, fear loses its exaggerating power. Accuracy is calm. Calm is strength. Strength steadies the mind. A steady mind does not borrow trouble from tomorrow. It attends to today. Today is always manageable when approached lawfully. Tomorrow responds to what is done today. Response is predictable. Fear imagines chaos. Law produces order. Order reassures the subconscious that life is not hostile. Hostility is a projection of inner confusion. Confusion is dissolving. As confusion fades, trust in process replaces demand for certainty. Process unfolds gradually, yet reliably. A man who trusts process does not rush. He continues. Continuation defeats fear. Fear demands final answers. Life offers sequence. Sequence is sufficient. Each step taken lawfully prepares the next. This knowledge removes urgency. Urgency once pressured the mind to solve the future in advance. That pressure is lifting. The mind rests in the understanding that it will meet tomorrow with judgment, not panic. Judgment is sharpened by calm. Calm is learned through repetition. Repetition is now working in your favor. The future no longer feels like a cliff edge. It feels like ground extending forward, one step at a time. Each step reveals the next. Fear fades when the mind no longer imagines falling. You are walking now. Walking requires balance, not speed. Balance restores confidence. Confidence steadies action. Steady action compounds results. Results reinforce belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity governed by law does not tremble. This identity is forming. The future has already begun responding, not with spectacle, but with order. Order is quiet. Quiet strength endures. Fear does not. As this understanding settles deeper, rest becomes natural. Sleep no longer feels like avoidance. It feels like preparation. Preparation continues even as consciousness rests, because habit force works without supervision. Habit force obeys law. You are aligned with it. The future no longer demands vigilance. It invites participation. Participation removes fear, and fear, once removed, does not return easily. You are learning why. When the mind finally accepts that tomorrow answers to principle, it ceases to invent dangers for its own occupation. Fear requires confusion to survive. Confusion thrives only where thought lacks structure. Structure is now replacing confusion, and with it the restless urge to anticipate harm begins to fade. Fear once demanded constant attention. Law requires only recognition. Recognition restores composure. Composure allows reason to govern reaction. A man governed by reason does not dread the unknown. He respects it. Respect differs from fear in one essential way. Respect assumes capacity. Fear assumes collapse. When capacity is assumed, the future loses its power to intimidate. Intimidation depends on helplessness. Helplessness dissolves under understanding. Understanding grows with repetition. You are repeating understanding now. Every time you consider the future as a sequence of causes and effects rather than a sudden trial, you strengthen this understanding. The subconscious accepts this pattern and begins aligning emotion and conduct accordingly. Emotion settles, conduct steadies. The entire inner system adjusts to a new expectation. Expectation is instruction. Instruction becomes habit. Habit governs reaction. Reaction shapes destiny. Fear loses relevance in this progression. The mind once rushed ahead to imagine endings. Endings frightened it because they appeared final and uncontrollable. Law replaces endings with continuance. There is always another cause to set in motion, another adjustment to make, another step to take. Continuance dissolves finality. Finality feeds fear. Continuance sustains hope grounded in action. This hope is not wishful. It is practical. It rests on the certainty that effort applied lawfully produces response. Response may arrive gradually, but it arrives inevitably. This inevitability calms the imagination. Calm imagination does not invent disaster, it invents method. Method replaces drama. Drama belongs to superstition. Superstition imagines fate as hostile. Law reveals fate as responsive. Responsive conditions can be influenced. Influence restores dignity. Dignity steadies the mind. A steady mind does not fear tomorrow. Fear also fades when a man understands that adversity is temporary and informative. Adversity does not announce ruin. It announces adjustment. The man who understands law welcomes adjustment because he knows it refines method. Refinement improves outcome. Improvement follows correction. Correction does not threaten. Fear resists correction. You no longer resist. As resistance dissolves, patience replaces urgency. Patience is not delay. It is trust in process. Trust removes anxiety. Anxiety once forced the mind to solve tomorrow in advance. That demand has been lifted. You no longer need to outrun the future. You need only meet it. Meeting the future requires presence. Presence anchors attention. Attention grounded in the present moment denies fear the ability to borrow from tomorrow. Fear weakens when it cannot escape into imagined time. The present moment is always manageable. It contains only what is real. The future frightens only when imagined as a whole. Law breaks the whole into parts. Parts invite action. Action dissolves fear. This dissolution is not dramatic. It is gradual and certain. Each night the subconscious is fed order instead of chaos. Each day behavior reflects greater steadiness. Steadiness accumulates into confidence. Confidence grounded in law does not fluctuate. It endures. Others will sense this endurance. They will feel less urgency in your presence. They will trust your judgment without knowing why. This trust arises because law expresses itself quietly through conduct. Conduct aligned with law reassures. Reassurance attracts cooperation. Cooperation reduces resistance. Resistance once magnified fear. Fear loses ground. The future now begins to feel less like an unknown force and more like a continuation of what you are already doing. Continuation reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty loses its sharpness. What remains is attentiveness. Attentiveness is calm readiness. Readiness is power. Power does not fear tomorrow. Fear once claimed that tomorrow might undo you. Law refutes this claim. Tomorrow reflects today. Today is within your influence. Influence exercised consistently produces predictable change. Predictability calms the nervous impulse. Calm restores judgment. Judgment directs effort. Effort produces result. Result reinforces belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity rooted in law does not tremble. You are rooting now. As this rooting deepens, rest becomes easier. The mind no longer needs to monitor imagined threats. It releases vigilance. Sleep deepens. Recovery improves. Strength returns. Strength supports response. Response dissolves fear. This is the quiet transformation underway. The future no longer looms. It responds. It waits. It obeys law. And you are learning how to apply it without fear. When a man reaches the point where he trusts law more than feeling, fear of the future loses its last defense. Feeling fluctuates. Law does not. Feeling exaggerates. Law clarifies. A man who relies on feeling will always be uncertain. A man who relies on law will always be prepared. Prepared men do not fear tomorrow. They expect to meet it. Expectation governs posture. A man who expects to meet the future stands differently in the present. His mind does not crouch. It remains upright, attentive, and composed. This posture alone alters how the subconscious responds to uncertainty. Posture is instruction. Instruction becomes habit. Habit governs reaction. Reaction once fed fear. Reaction now feeds calm. Calm spreads through the entire inner system. Thoughts slow, images soften. The mind no longer rushes ahead, seeking to defend itself against imagined harm. Defense is no longer necessary when understanding replaces superstition. Superstition feared punishment. Law expects response. Response restores dignity. Dignity removes panic. Panic belongs to men who believe they will. Be overwhelmed. You are no longer feeding that belief. Each moment you accept that tomorrow will respond to causes you are now setting, fear weakens further. Fear depends on forgetting. Understanding remembers. Remembering restores balance. Balance steadies judgment. Judgment directs action. Action produces evidence. Evidence strengthens belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity no longer trembles. The future once appeared large because it was undefined. Undefined things invite imagination, and imagination without discipline invents danger. Law defines. It reduces the future from an overwhelming mass into a series of consequences. Consequences are manageable. They respond to adjustment. Adjustment is power. A man who adjusts does not fear error. Error becomes instruction rather than condemnation. Fear depends on the belief that mistakes are final. Law reveals that mistakes are temporary signals guiding correction. Correction improves outcome. Outcome reinforces confidence. Confidence dissolves fear. This is why men who persist rarely fear tomorrow. Persistence assumes correction. It assumes learning. It assumes progress even through difficulty. Fear assumes collapse. These two assumptions cannot coexist. You are choosing persistence. Persistence aligns with law. Law supports persistence. As this alignment strengthens, the mind stops scanning the horizon for danger. It becomes occupied with present action. Occupation is the enemy of anxiety. Anxiety thrives in idle imagination. Imagination engaged in method cannot breed fear. Method replaces mystery. Mystery once magnified the future. Magnification dissolves under understanding. Understanding shrinks fear to its true size. That size is small. The future no longer appears as an unknown judge. It appears as a field governed by principle. Fields do not threaten. They invite cultivation. Cultivation requires patience, not panic. Patience grows from trust. Trust rests on experience. Experience has already shown you that you can respond. You are reminding the mind of this truth now. Each reminder weakens fear's claim that you are unprepared. Preparedness is not knowledge of events. It is confidence in response. Response is trained through repetition, not prediction. Prediction failed you. Repetition will not. As repetition continues, the nervous impulse that once accompanied thoughts of tomorrow begins to quiet. The body responds to belief faster than the mind recognizes it. This quiet is evidence that fear is no longer being reinforced. Reinforcement maintains habit. Habit force preserves what is reinforced. You are reinforcing law. Fear loses reinforcement. Fear fades. The future now appears closer, more familiar, less abstract. Familiarity removes intimidation. The unknown becomes known in method, if not in detail. Method is sufficient. Detail will arrive when needed. Need will arise when action demands it. Action is now easier. Ease does not mean passivity. It means absence of resistance. Resistance once fed fear. Fear starves without resistance. You are learning to trust the sequence of life rather than fearing its turns. Sequence implies order. Order implies predictability of response. Response is where your power resides. Power exercised calmly is mastery. Mastery does not announce itself, it operates. As mastery develops, you may notice that others sense your steadiness. They may seek your judgment. They may rely on your composure. They may feel safer in your presence. This is not coincidence. Law expresses itself outwardly through conduct. Conduct aligned with law inspires confidence. Confidence spreads. Fear retreats. The future now begins to feel like something you are already participating in, rather than something waiting to confront you. Participation removes fear. Spectators fear more than participants. You are no longer a spectator. You are engaged. Engagement replaces dread with purpose. Purpose organizes thought. Organized thought sustains calm. Calm governs. Reaction. Reaction no longer feeds fear. This cycle strengthens itself. As this understanding deepens, the mind no longer demands certainty of outcome. It rests in certainty of process. Process unfolds reliably when guided by law. Trust in process is the final antidote to fear of the future. You are trusting now. Trust removes vigilance. Vigilance once exhausted you. Exhaustion magnified fear. Rest restores strength. Strength supports response. Response dissolves fear. The future no longer stands apart from you. It responds. It reflects. It obeys law. And you are learning quietly and steadily how to meet it without fear. Fear of the future gains most of its strength from a single misuse of the mind, undisciplined imagination. The imagination was never intended to serve as a workshop for disaster. Its purpose is creation. Yet when left without guidance, it drifts naturally toward danger, because danger excites emotion, and emotion demands attention. Attention feeds repetition. Repetition feeds habit. Habit feeds fear. This cycle has been operating silently for years. Most men do not realize that every fearful picture of tomorrow they have ever held was self-created. No outer force placed it there. It arose because imagination was allowed to roam without command. When imagination roams, it does not choose wisely. It chooses vividly. Vivid images persuade the subconscious. The subconscious obeys images. Thus, fear becomes convincing. The man who wishes to remove fear of the future must first reclaim authority over imagination. Authority does not mean suppression. Suppression strengthens what it attempts to destroy. Authority means direction. The imagination must be given work to do, or it will invent work for itself. Invented work is always dangerous. Directed work is always useful. Disaster is never feared because it is likely. It is feared because it is rehearsed. The subconscious responds not to probability, but to repetition. A single fearful image repeated nightly is more influential than 100 calm facts considered briefly. This is why fear grows strongest at night. Night removes resistance. Night invites rehearsal. Most men rehearse unconsciously. You are learning to rehearse deliberately. When imagination is directed, fear loses its stage. It cannot perform without images. Remove the images, and fear becomes weak, shapeless, and ineffective. This is why men who focus imagination on plans feel calmer than those who focus on outcomes. Outcomes excite fear. Plans direct effort. Effort calms the mind. The imagination must be trained to picture sequence instead of catastrophe. Sequence breaks the future into steps. Catastrophe presents it as a single overwhelming moment. The mind can engage steps. It recoils from masses. Fear magnifies. Sequence reduces. This is the lawful remedy. Thomas Edison did not imagine failure when his experiments did not succeed. He imagined adjustment. Each attempt was not an ending, but a step. This habit of imagination kept his mind productive rather than fearful. Productive imagination builds confidence. Fearful imagination drains it. When a man repeatedly imagines disaster, he conditions his body to respond with tension. The body learns fear before the mind understands it. This is why fear feels physical. It is rehearsed physically through imagination. Directed imagination releases tension. Release restores calm. Calm improves judgment. You are now retraining imagination to serve judgment rather than fear. This retraining begins by refusing to entertain vague pictures of harm. Vagueness is fear's ally. The imagination paints danger broadly because it lacks instruction. Instruction brings precision. Precision removes exaggeration. Exaggeration feeds fear. Precision starves it. When a fearful image arises, it need not be resisted. Resistance gives it energy. Instead, it is replaced. Replacement is the only permanent cure. The image of catastrophe is replaced with the image of response. Response is always within your control. Imagine yourself responding calmly. Imagine yourself adjusting intelligently. Imagine yourself continuing. These images instruct the subconscious to expect competence rather than collapse. Competence dissolves fear. As this practice continues, the imagination becomes quieter. It no longer leaps automatically to worst-case scenes. It waits for direction. This waiting is not emptiness. It is readiness. Readiness is calm. Calm is power. Fear cannot survive where power is assumed. Imagination, when disciplined, becomes the greatest ally of courage. It allows the mind to rehearse success, steadiness, and correction. These rehearsals prepare the nervous system to respond without panic. Panic is rehearsed fear. Calm is rehearsed order. You are rehearsing order now. The future begins to feel less threatening because the mind is no longer filling it with uncontrolled pictures. It is filling it with method. Method occupies imagination productively. Fear retreats when imagination is busy with constructive work. Busy imagination does not wander. Wandering imagination invents danger. This distinction changes everything. Others will sense this change before you fully. Recognize it yourself. They will notice that you are less reactive, less anxious, less inclined to anticipate trouble. They may say you seem more grounded. What they are noticing is disciplined imagination. Disciplined imagination communicates stability. Stability reassures. Reassurance attracts trust. Trust invites opportunity. Opportunity met with calm produces progress. Progress reinforces confidence. Confidence further disciplines imagination. The cycle strengthens itself. Fear once trained imagination to expect disaster. You are now training imagination to expect direction. Expectation shapes experience. Experience reinforces belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity governs destiny. This is the lawful sequence now unfolding. From this point forward, the imagination will no longer be a breeding ground for fear of the future. It will become a workshop for preparation. Preparation does not require knowing what will happen. It requires knowing how you will respond. You are learning to picture response rather than result. This alone removes fear's foundation. As this practice deepens, sleep becomes easier. The mind no longer entertains frightening images before rest. It releases the day without anticipation of harm. Rest deepens. Recovery improves. Strength returns. Strength supports response. Response dissolves fear. This is the quiet victory of disciplined imagination. The future no longer frightens the man who controls his images, and you are learning how to do exactly that. When imagination is no longer permitted to roam without direction, fear loses its favorite instrument. Fear cannot exist without pictures. It feeds upon scenes the mind paints in advance. When those scenes are withdrawn and replaced with orderly expectation, fear weakens, then fades, then becomes unfamiliar. Unfamiliar thoughts lose power. Power follows repetition. You are changing repetition now. The imagination was never meant to predict calamity. Its proper office is to arrange thought into form, to give structure to desire, and to provide the mind with direction. When it is idle, it turns against the thinker. When it is occupied, it becomes his ally. An occupied imagination is a disciplined imagination. Discipline brings calm. Calm dissolves fear. Men who fear the future suffer not from danger, but from unused imagination. They allow it to invent endings instead of beginnings. Endings frighten the mind because they imply loss of control. Beginnings invite movement and adjustment. Adjustment is power in motion. Power removes fear. Each time the imagination rehearses response instead of result, it instructs the subconscious to expect competence. Expectation shapes posture. Posture shapes conduct. Conduct shapes outcome. Fear cannot interrupt this chain once it is established. Established chains govern behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. Identity stabilizes courage. This stability is now forming within you. You may notice that when a fearful thought arises, it no longer holds your attention as it once did. It appears briefly, then fades. This is not suppression, it is neglect. Neglect starves fear more effectively than resistance ever could. Fear demands attention. Attention gives it life. You are withdrawing attention. In its place, you are supplying imagination with useful labor. You are teaching it to picture orderly movement, calm response, and steady continuation. These images do not excite emotion, they settle it. Settled emotion allows reason to guide action. Reason directs imagination productively. This cooperation between reason and imagination is the foundation of all achievement. It is also the end of fear. Fear arises only when imagination operates without reason. Reason restores balance. Balance calms the mind. Calm strengthens judgment. Judgment improves response. Response dissolves fear. This progression does not require effort. It requires consistency. Each night you repeat this practice, imagination becomes more obedient. Obedience does not feel restrictive. It feels relieving. Relief arrives when chaos ends. Chaos lived in uncontrolled pictures. Pictures are now under command. The future no longer appears as a stage upon which disaster might appear without warning. It appears as a field of activity awaiting direction. Fields are worked, not feared. Work replaces worry. Worry consumes strength without producing result. Work guided by imagination produces progress. Progress reassures the subconscious. Reassurance quiets fear. You are noticing this quiet now. Others will notice it soon. They will observe that you no longer speculate about what might go wrong. You speak more of what can be done. This shift alters how people respond to you. They trust your judgment because it is not clouded by fear. Trust attracts cooperation. Cooperation multiplies effort. Effort applied calmly produces better outcomes. Outcomes reinforce confidence. Confidence further disciplines imagination. Fear recedes further. The imagination now begins to work ahead of you constructively. Instead of rehearsing harm, it anticipates order. It supplies the mind with pathways rather than obstacles. This constructive anticipation is the opposite of fear. Fear anticipates loss. Constructive imagination anticipates process. Process is manageable. Manageability removes intimidation. As intimidation fades, the future no longer feels heavy. It feels neutral, even inviting. This neutrality is important. Fear is emotional excess. Neutrality restores clarity. Clarity allows intelligent action. Intelligent action replaces anxiety. Anxiety once exhausted you. Energy is returning now. This energy is not excitement. It is steadiness. Steadiness is more powerful than excitement because it endures. Endurance carries men through uncertainty without collapse. Fear collapses endurance. You are rebuilding it. As disciplined imagination becomes habit, fear of the future will no longer arise automatically. When it does arise, it will be recognized immediately as misdirected thought. Recognition removes its mystery. Without mystery, fear loses authority. Authority follows belief. Belief is shifting. The imagination has been reclaimed. From this point forward, it will serve direction rather than disaster. It will assist planning rather than prediction. It will support courage rather than doubt. This change is permanent if maintained. Maintenance requires only repetition. You are repeating now. Rest in this discipline. The future no longer belongs to fear. It belongs to imagination under command, and you are learning to command it. As imagination learns to obey, the nervous impulse that once accompanied thoughts of tomorrow begins to quiet. The body no longer braces itself against images that are no longer supplied. This physical calm is not accidental. The body follows the mind's pictures. When the pictures change, the response changes. Fear was once rehearsed nightly. Order is now rehearsed. Rehearsal becomes habit. Habit governs reaction. Reaction once produced tension. Reaction now produces composure. Composure is not absence of thought. It is absence of disorder. The mind remains active, yet it moves deliberately. Deliberate movement prevents panic. Panic requires speed without direction. Direction removes urgency. Urgency once magnified the future. The future is now returning to proper scale. When imagination is disciplined, it no longer leaps ahead to the final scene. It remains with the next step. This restraint protects the mind from overload. Overload overwhelms judgment. Judgment weakened by overload feeds fear. Fear collapses judgment. Judgment restores control. You are restoring judgment now. This restoration changes how the mind approaches uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer invites speculation. It invites preparation. Preparation does not demand prediction. It demands readiness of response. Readiness is rehearsed through imagination. You are rehearsing readiness. As readiness becomes familiar, fear becomes unfamiliar. Familiarity determines authority. Thoughts that feel familiar influence behavior automatically. Thoughts that feel foreign are ignored. Fear is becoming foreign. Directed imagination is becoming familiar. This reversal marks real progress. You may notice that your thoughts about the future no longer spiral. They arrive, pause, and depart. This calm passing indicates that imagination is no longer amplifying them. Amplification fed fear. Restraint dissolves it. Restraint is strength. Strength steadies emotion. Emotion once carried fear. Emotion now carries calm. Calm alters perception. Perception shapes expectation. Expectation guides conduct. Conduct determines outcome. This sequence is now operating in your favor. Men who command imagination do not live in anticipation of disaster. They live in preparation for action. Preparation replaces dread with purpose. Purpose directs effort. Effort applied purposefully reassures the subconscious. Reassurance quiets fear. The future now begins to feel less like a threat and more like a task. Tasks can be approached methodically. Threats demand defense. Defense exhausts. Method sustains. Sustained effort outlasts fear. Fear depends on collapse. You are not collapsing. You are continuing. As imagination continues to serve order, sleep deepens. The mind no longer feeds itself frightening images before rest. Instead, it releases the day without rehearsal of harm. This release allows habit force to continue its work uninterrupted. Habit force supports whatever is repeated calmly. You are repeating calm. Calm will be preserved. This preservation ensures that fear of the distress future does not return easily. Fear cannot regain influence without images. Images cannot persist without attention. Attention is now directed elsewhere. Elsewhere toward sequence. Sequence toward action. Action toward progress. Progress toward confidence. Confidence toward calm authority. Authority dissolves fear. This is not a temporary condition. It is structural. Once imagination is disciplined, it does not easily return to chaos. Order feels better. Calm feels safer. The mind prefers them. Preference guides behavior. Behavior stabilizes identity. Identity governs destiny. The future no longer frightens the man who controls his images. You are learning to do so steadily, and the more steadily you do, the quieter fear becomes until it is no longer heard at all. As imagination comes fully under command, the mind begins to experience a new form of freedom. This freedom is not emptiness. nor is it distraction. It is freedom from intrusion. Thoughts no longer arrive uninvited and remain unchallenged. They appear, are recognized, and pass if they serve no purpose. Purpose governs thought. Thought governed by purpose does not wander. Wandering is the birthplace of fear. When imagination is no longer allowed to wander, fear loses its breeding ground. It cannot form without unexamined pictures. It cannot grow without attention. It cannot persist without repetition. All three are now being withdrawn. Withdrawal is not force, it is discipline. Discipline restores order. Order settles the mind. A settled mind does not invent danger to occupy itself. It finds satisfaction in sequence, in preparation, in steady movement forward. This satisfaction replaces the restless urge to imagine endings. Endings once frightened the mind because they appeared final. Finality implies loss of control. Control returns through continuance. Continuance dissolves fear. The imagination now begins to assist rather than alarm. It offers possibilities of adjustment instead of scenes of collapse. It shows the mind how to proceed rather than what to avoid. This shift changes the emotional tone of the future from threatening to neutral. Neutrality is powerful. Fear cannot thrive in neutrality. Neutrality allows judgment. Judgment directs action. Action produces progress. Progress reassures the subconscious. Reassurance weakens fear. You are now experiencing this reassurance. It does not announce itself loudly. It feels like quiet steadiness, a sense that tomorrow does not require defense, a sense that whatever arrives will be met competently. This sense is not emotion, it is structure. Structure governs behavior even when emotion fluctuates. Fear relied on emotion. You are relying on structure. As structure strengthens, imagination stops magnifying uncertainty. It no longer paints the future larger than it is. It restores proportion. Proportion is the enemy of fear. Fear survives only when imagination exaggerates scale. Scale reduced becomes manageable. Manageable becomes approachable. Approachable invites action. Action dissolves dread. This is why men who plan calmly do not fear tomorrow. They do not know outcomes in advance, but they know steps. Steps are sufficient. Fear demands outcomes. Law operates through steps. You are aligning with law. Others will soon notice this alignment. They will sense that you no longer speculate about what might happen. You speak of what can be done. Your language becomes simpler, more direct. This simplicity is not ignorance. It is clarity. Clarity is confidence. Confidence attracts trust. Trust invites cooperation. Cooperation eases effort. Ease encourages persistence. Persistence outlasts fear. As imagination continues its disciplined work, the mind no longer seeks stimulation through worry. Worry once provided movement in the absence of direction. Direction has now been supplied. The mind prefers direction. Preference guides habit force. Habit force preserves preference. Fear loses its place. The future now feels less like an abstract unknown and more like an extension of present. Conduct. Extension implies continuity. Continuity reassures. Reassurance quiets the impulse to predict disaster. Prediction of disaster was never protection. It was rehearsal. Rehearsal is now constructive. Constructive rehearsal prepares response. Response dissolves fear. The imagination is now rehearsing competence rather than collapse. Each time this rehearsal occurs, the nervous impulse grows calmer. The body learns that it no longer needs to brace itself against thought. This physical calm reinforces mental calm. The cycle is complete. Mind instructs body. Body confirms mind. Fear fades. This fading does not require attention. It happens naturally when imagination is no longer misused. Misuse was unconscious. Discipline is conscious. Conscious use always prevails. You are now using imagination consciously. This use will continue as long as repetition continues. Repetition does not require effort. It requires consistency. Consistency is now forming. From this point forward, fear of the future will not dominate your nights. The images that once fueled it are gone. In their place stand orderly pictures of response, adjustment, and continuation. These pictures instruct habit force. Habit force protects what it is given. Fear will not easily return. And even if it attempts to appear, it will find no images to support it. Without images, fear cannot speak. Without speech, it cannot persuade. Without persuasion, it dissolves. You are learning why disciplined imagination is the master key. The future no longer frightens the man who controls his inner pictures, and you are becoming that man. When imagination is fully reclaimed, the mind no longer seeks excitement through fear. Fear once supplied intensity where direction was absent. Intensity without purpose exhausted the mind and created the illusion of urgency. That illusion has dissolved. What remains is quiet engagement with what is real. Reality does not frighten. Only imagined disorder does. As imagination becomes orderly, the future loses its dramatic edge. It no longer appears as a sudden event waiting to test you. It appears as a continuation of conduct already underway. Continuation feels familiar. Familiarity removes intimidation. Intimidation depends on novelty. Order removes novelty. This change is subtle but decisive. You may find that thoughts of tomorrow no longer demand attention. They pass without insistence. This passing indicates that imagination is no longer feeding them energy. Energy once supplied fear with urgency. Urgency fades without fuel. Fear fades with it. The imagination now performs its proper office. It arranges thought into sequence. It supports planning rather than speculation. It assists judgment rather than undermines it. This assistance strengthens self-command. Self-command is calm power. Power does not hurry. It proceeds. Proceeding steadily removes the impulse to foresee endings. Endings frighten the mind because they suggested finality. Disciplined imagination replaces endings with continuance. There is always a next step, a next adjustment, a next decision. Continuance dissolves finality. Finality fed fear. Fear loses ground. As this condition stabilizes, the future no longer occupies emotional space. It occupies practical space. Practical space invites preparation. Preparation does not excite anxiety. It produces readiness. Readiness quiets fear. The body now responds differently to thoughts of what lies ahead. Where tension once appeared, relaxation now follows. This response is not forced. It is learned. The body has been instructed through repeated calm imagery. Imagery instructs physiology. Physiology reinforces belief. Belief stabilizes identity. Identity governs reaction. Reaction no longer feeds fear. Others will sense this transformation in your presence. You will seem less reactive, less hurried, less burdened by anticipation. They may not understand why you feel easier to speak with, easier to rely upon. What they are sensing is disciplined imagination expressing itself through calm conduct. Calm conduct invites trust. Trust invites cooperation. Cooperation reduces resistance. Resistance once magnified fear. Fear retreats. The imagination now finds satisfaction in building rather than warning. Warning was its former occupation, born of neglect. Building is its rightful role. Building requires patience, order, and repetition. Patience replaces urgency. Order replaces chaos. Repetition replaces anxiety. This replacement is now established. Fear of the future cannot coexist with disciplined imagination, because disciplined imagination supplies the mind with direction. Direction removes the need for alarm. Alarm existed only to fill emptiness. Emptiness has been filled with sequence, sequence with purpose, purpose with action, action with progress, progress with confidence, confidence with calm, authority. This authority does not boast, it rests. Rest is not withdrawal. It is trust in the system now operating within you. Trust allows release. Release deepens rest. Rest strengthens judgment. Judgment improves response. Response removes fear. You are no longer dependent upon favorable thoughts to feel secure. Security now comes from structure. Structure remains even when emotion fluctuates. Fear once rose when emotion fell. Structure prevents collapse. Collapse fed fear. Fear is losing relevance. The imagination will continue serving you in this manner as long as it is occupied. Occupation does not require constant attention. It requires habit. Habit is now forming. Habit force preserves order. Order endures. This endurance marks the completion of this work. Fear of the future has been removed not by force, but by replacement. Imagination has been given its rightful task. It no longer invents danger. It constructs readiness. Readiness does not fear tomorrow. It meets it. This is the permanent condition you are entering. And with disciplined imagination firmly in place, the future holds no power to disturb you. Fear of the future does not persist because it is reasonable. It persists because it has been practiced. Practice ingrains habit. Habit shapes response. Response becomes character. Character then appears fixed, even though it was formed gradually and unconsciously. What was formed unconsciously can be reshaped consciously. This is the work of habit force. Habit force is neither good nor bad. It simply preserves whatever is repeated with feeling. For years, fear has been rehearsed nightly, quietly, and without resistance. The subconscious accepted these rehearsals as instruction and built response around them. Response followed habit. Habit followed repetition. Repetition followed neglect. Neglect ends here. Most men attempt to defeat fear by argument. They reason with it. They analyze it. They explain it. None of these methods succeed because fear is not intellectual. It is habitual. Habit is never broken by logic alone. It is replaced only by a stronger habit. Replacement is law. Fear must be crowded out. Habit force obeys only what is repeated. You are now repeating something different. Every night the mind falls asleep while entertaining calm expectation. Habit force records that state, every night fear is absent. Its claim weakens. Habit force does not argue. It records. It preserves. It reinforces. Reinforcement creates permanence. Permanence stabilizes identity. Identity governs reaction. Fear once governed reaction. Reaction is changing now. This change does not arrive as excitement. It arrives as neutrality. Neutrality is the first sign that habit force is shifting. Fear thrives on emotion. Neutrality deprives it of fuel. Fuel was supplied through repetition. Repetition has changed. Men often believe that change must feel dramatic to be real. This belief is false. Habit force changes quietly. The most powerful transformations occur without announcement. They reveal themselves later through conduct. Conduct is the evidence. You will notice that decisions come easier. The future does not demand negotiation. You move forward without argument. This ease is not recklessness. It is habit aligned with order. Order repeated becomes natural. Natural behavior requires no effort. Fear once required effort to manage. Fear is no longer being managed. It is being replaced. Habit force now associates night with calm rather than vigilance. The subconscious no longer prepares the body for imagined danger. Muscles relax. Breathing deepens. Sleep restores rather than exhausts. Rest supports strength. Strength improves response. Response reinforces confidence. Confidence feeds habit force. Habit force protects confidence. This cycle is now active. Fear of the future once felt inevitable because it had become familiar. Familiarity creates authority. Authority shapes belief. Belief becomes identity. Identity governs destiny. You are interrupting this chain. You are creating a new familiarity. Calm becomes familiar. Order becomes familiar. Readiness becomes familiar. Fear becomes unfamiliar. Unfamiliar. Thoughts lose influence. Influence follows repetition. Each night fear is absent, its voice weakens. Each night calm is present, its authority strengthens. This process does not require attention. It requires consistency. Consistency is the lever of habit force. As consistency builds, the mind no longer reacts when thoughts of tomorrow arise. Reaction once fueled fear. Non-reaction starves it. The mind observes without engagement. Observation is mastery. Mastery is calm power. Power does not fear the future. Fear survives only where habit supports it. Habit is changing now. Others will sense this change in you. They will notice steadiness where anxiety once lived. They may comment on your patience, your composure, your certainty of movement. They will not see effort. They will see ease. Ease is the sign of habit force aligned. Aligned habit force carries men forward even when emotion fluctuates. Emotion no longer dictates behavior. Habit does. Habit trained in calm produces calm action under pressure. Pressure no longer threatens. It activates discipline. Discipline was built through repetition. Repetition has been deliberate. This deliberateness marks the end of unconscious fear. Fear is always unconscious repetition. Once repetition becomes conscious, fear cannot survive. You are now conscious of what you impress upon the mind. This awareness changes everything. From this point forward, fear of the future will not return suddenly. It would require repeated rehearsal. You are no longer rehearsing it. You are rehearsing order, response, and continuance. Habit force preserves what is rehearsed. You are safe in this law. The future no longer approaches a fearful mind. It approaches a disciplined one, and discipline endures. Habit force does not concern itself with truth or falsehood. It preserves only what is impressed upon it consistently. This is why fear once appeared so convincing. It was not convincing because it was accurate. It was convincing because it was familiar. Familiarity creates obedience. Obedience once served fear. It now serves order. The subconscious does not ask whether a thought is helpful. It asks only whether it is repeated. Repetition is its language. Whatever is spoken most often becomes its instruction. You are now speaking calm into it nightly. Calm repeated becomes character. Character governs destiny. This is the mechanism now working silently within you. Men often underestimate the power of small repetitions. They expect change to come from dramatic effort. Habit force ignores drama. It responds to steadiness. A quiet thought repeated nightly outweighs an emotional decision made once. Consistency overrules intensity. You are choosing consistency. Each night you fall asleep without rehearsing fear. You deny habit force its former instruction. Each night you allow calm expectation to occupy the mind. You supply a new command. Habit force records these commands faithfully. Faithful recording produces permanence. Permanence stabilizes behavior. Behavior reveals transformation. You may not feel different immediately. Habit force works beneath awareness. But you will act differently. Action will become simpler. Decisions will require less debate. The future will feel less demanding. Demand once fueled anxiety. Ease replaces it. Ease is not carelessness. It is alignment. Alignment with habit force produces smooth motion. Smooth motion reassures the subconscious that progress is occurring. Progress dissolves fear because fear thrives only where movement stops. Stagnation-fed fear, movement starves it. Habit force now associates tomorrow with manageable continuation rather than threat. This association changes emotional response automatically. Emotion no longer rises when the future is mentioned. Neutrality appears instead. Neutrality is victory. Fear requires emotion. Without emotion, it fades. As neutrality strengthens, confidence appears quietly. This confidence is not excitement. It is steadiness. It expresses itself in posture, tone, and patience. Others will sense it without explanation. Calm confidence invites trust. Trust attracts cooperation. Cooperation eases effort. Effort applied calmly produces better results. Results reinforce belief. Belief strengthens habit force. Habit force protects belief. This cycle now sustains itself. Fear of the future once returned because habit force was never interrupted. Now it has been. Interruption followed by replacement creates permanent change. Fear cannot return without rehearsal. You are no longer rehearsing it. Rehearsal now belongs to order. Order belongs to you. The mind now rests more easily. Sleep deepens because vigilance is no longer required. Vigilance was fear disguised as preparation. Preparation now occurs through discipline, not tension. Tension exhausted you. Discipline restores you. Restoration strengthens response. Response dissolves fear. This restoration is cumulative. Each night adds to it. Each day reflects it. You will notice that uncertainty no longer unsettles you as it once did. It may still exist, but it does not command attention. Command has shifted. You now command. Habit force has accepted new authority. Authority expressed calmly endures. The future no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something to continue into. Continuation is safe. Continuation is lawful. Continuation dissolves fear. This is the work of habit force completed through discipline rather than struggle. It will continue as long as repetition continues. Repetition is now natural. Fear has lost its place, and habit force will not give it back. Fear of the future cannot survive in the mind of a man who knows who he is. Uncertainty frightens only those whose identity is unsettled. When a man does not yet recognize himself as the source of decision, the future appears as something external, something approaching him with demands. Identity reverses this relationship. The future does not approach the decisive man. The decisive man approaches the future. Most men unknowingly live with borrowed identities. They see themselves as reactors rather than initiators, as responders rather than originators. This borrowed identity leaves them vulnerable to fear because it assumes that life acts first and the man responds second. This assumption is false. Life responds to decision. Decision begins within. When a man claims identity as one who decides, fear loses authority immediately. Fear thrives only where indecision exists. Indecision leaves space for imagination to invent threat. Decision closes that space. Decision is structure. Structure calms the mind. Calm removes fear. Identity is not declared through words alone. It is established through repeated acts of self-command. Each time a man chooses to decide rather than delay, he strengthens his identity. Identity formed this way becomes stable. Stability removes fear of tomorrow. The man who knows himself as a decider does not require reassurance from circumstances. He expects uncertainty. He does not resent it. Uncertainty becomes the field in which decision proves itself. Decision thrives in uncertainty. Fear collapses within it. This is why great leaders appear calm in times that unsettle others. Their calm does not arise from favorable conditions. It arises from settled identity. They do not wait for clarity to move. They create clarity through movement. Movement confirms identity. Identity directs movement. This confirmation loop stabilizes behavior. Fear cannot interrupt it. A man who identifies himself as one who decides no longer asks whether the future will be kind. He asks only what decision must be made next. This question grounds him in the present and removes speculation. Speculation feeds fear. Decision dissolves it. You are now forming this identity. Each night you fall asleep having chosen calm over rehearsal of fear, you reinforce it. Each day you act without excessive negotiation, you strengthen it. Identity is built through consistency, not declaration. Consistency creates belief. Belief stabilizes conduct. Conduct expresses identity. Others will soon perceive this shift. They will notice that you no longer speak as though life is happening to you. Your words reflect ownership. Ownership is felt even when unspoken. Ownership inspires confidence in others. Confidence invites opportunity. Opportunity meets preparedness. Preparedness belongs to identity. Fear once made you feel small before. Tomorrow, identity restores proportion. The future no longer seems larger than you. It appears equal, even subordinate, because you recognize yourself as the one who supplies decision. Decision governs outcome. Outcome no longer intimidates. Identity also removes the fear of making mistakes. The man who sees himself as a decider understands that error is part of authority. Authority is not perfection. It is responsibility. Responsibility empowers. Fear avoids responsibility. You are embracing it. When responsibility is accepted willingly, fear dissolves. There is no longer any need to predict perfectly. Adjustment replaces prediction. Adjustment is strength. Strength does not fear correction. Correction improves method. Method ensures progress. The future now becomes a place to exercise identity rather than test it. You no longer feel as though tomorrow will reveal whether you are capable. You know capability already. Tomorrow merely offers opportunity to express it. Expression builds confidence. Confidence stabilizes identity. Identity removes fear. This identity also changes how you interpret delay. Delay once felt like danger. Now it feels like timing. Timing does not threaten the man who decides. He understands that movement continues even when visible progress pauses. Pause does not equal failure. Fear believed it did. You no longer believe that. The decisive identity does not rush. It proceeds. Proceeding steadily removes urgency. Urgency once pressured you to foresee everything in advance. That pressure is gone. You move now with authority. Authority does not hurry. It acts. As identity settles, the future becomes familiar. Familiarity removes intimidation. The unknown no longer appears hostile. It appears neutral, ready to be shaped by decision. Decision shapes destiny. This understanding ends the old relationship with fear. You are no longer a man waiting to see what will happen. You are a man who makes things happen. Fear cannot exist in that identity, and that identity is now taking root. Fear of the future cannot dwell in a mind governed by faith, rightly understood. Faith is not blind belief, nor is it emotional hope. Faith is a disciplined expectation grounded in law. It is the calm conviction that causes set in motion will produce their effects, even when the manner and timing remain unseen. Faith removes haste. Haste feeds fear. Most men misunderstand faith because they associate it with feeling. Feeling fluctuates. Faith endures. Faith does not require enthusiasm. It requires alignment. Alignment with law produces confidence that does not depend on circumstance. Circumstance changes. Law does not. When a man practices faith as expectation rather than emotion, fear loses its hold. Fear thrives where expectation is divided. Divided expectation imagines both success and failure. Faith chooses direction and refuses to enter. Stop for a moment and notice the truth you rarely admit. Money fear has been controlling your thoughts long before the bills arrive. It appears in the silence of the night, when no one is watching, tightening your chest, stealing your sleep. Tonight, that ends. Tonight, you will sleep without fear. You already know what it feels like to lie awake replaying numbers in your mind, bank balance, overdue payments, the cost of tomorrow. While the world sleeps, you perform quiet arithmetic with trembling hands. But you are not meant to live this way. Fear is not your master. It only behaves as one because you have not yet claimed your rightful authority. Financial fear is not a condition, it is a habit. A pattern of imagination rehearsed until your subconscious accepts it as law. You have allowed visions of shortage, loss, and disaster to play again and again until your own mind believes the worst is inevitable. Tonight we break that law and write a new one. Imagine this next scene clearly. You wake tomorrow and the first breath you take is calm. No spike of panic, no frantic planning, No dread about what the mailbox will reveal or what tomorrow might demand. Instead, stillness, confidence, the inner knowing that you will meet the day with more power than the day can demand from you. That feeling is not fantasy. It is the fruit of what you begin tonight. Financial fear thrives on one belief, that money is stronger than you, that it holds the power and you merely react. But money is not a master. It is a servant, and it obeys the man who has mastered his mind. As you listen tonight, I will guide your subconscious into remembering this truth. Let me ask you something you rarely ask yourself. How many opportunities have you rejected, not because they were impossible, but because fear convinced you that you were unprepared? How many decisions have you delayed because you feared making the wrong move? How many days have you lived beneath your calling because fear whispered that you were not enough? These losses accumulate. They shape a life of hesitation, but hesitation is not your destiny. You are capable of commanding wealth not in arrogance, but in certainty. And certainty begins in the mind long before it expresses itself in the world. You may think money problems come from circumstances, but circumstances are only mirrors of the beliefs you have allowed to take root. A mind soaked in worry cannot produce opportunity. But a mind trained in definiteness, faith, and purpose becomes a magnet for every resource it needs. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, your subconscious becomes more open than at any other hour. That openness is not weakness, it is opportunity. The words you hear in these hours will become the blueprint your mind follows. And if you feed it strength, it will build strength. If you feed it fearlessness, it will build fearlessness. Consider how many nights you have wasted repeating financial fear as though it were a prayer. What if I lose everything? What if I fail? What if I cannot provide? These questions are emotional poison, and the subconscious repeats whatever emotion it receives with the greatest intensity. Tonight, you will give it a different command. Tonight you will declare, I am the master of my money. I am the architect of my fortune. I walk in certainty, not fear. And with repetition, these statements will become the new law of your mind. I want you to picture a moment in your future. You receive a bill, an unexpected one, but instead of panic, you feel clarity. Instead of dread, you feel capability. Instead of shrinking, you rise, because fear no longer has roots in you. It has been replaced by the memory of your own power. This transformation does not require force. It requires permission. Fear loses its authority the moment you stop feeding it. You break its back not by fighting it, but by starving it. And you starve it by rehearsing faith with greater passion than you ever rehearsed worry. Listen carefully. Financial fear is not removed by income. Many men with great incomes live terrified. Fear is removed by identity. When you decide that you are the kind of man who commands opportunity, the world begins to treat you accordingly. Opportunity is drawn to certainty. Money follows definiteness. Prosperity gravitates toward the man who already sees himself prosperous. And tonight, as your conscious mind quiets, I will speak directly to the deeper part of you that must learn this law. You may not feel the shift all at once. Do not expect fireworks. Expect something gentler. Expect that tomorrow, when you reach for your wallet or check your bank balance, the usual fear will feel weaker. Expect that your breath will not catch. Expect that you will think more clearly. These are signs that the seeds planted tonight are already taking root. Understand this. You are not here to be entertained. These hours are not a distraction. They are a restructuring, a rewiring, a deliberate reshaping of the beliefs that govern your outcomes. What you accept tonight as true becomes the force that directs your actions tomorrow. And action is what transforms fear into fortune. You cannot drift into wealth. You cannot hope your way into confidence. You must train your mind until it responds to life with certainty instead of panic. That is why these hours matter. While you sleep, your mind will rehearse power instead of fear. It will rehearse abundance instead of lack. It will rehearse solutions instead of catastrophes. Let me give you another scene. The next time you sit at your table with bills spread before you, You will notice something odd. Your hands are steady. Your thoughts are clear. You do not rush. You do not spiral. Instead, you feel composed. You feel bigger than the problems on the table. That is the mind of a man who has trained himself in faith. You have been living as though money were some unpredictable force, something that appears and disappears without reason, but that is not so. Money responds to the man who has decided to stop fearing it and start mastering it. And mastery begins with belief. Belief followed by repetition. Repetition followed by action. Action followed by reward. Tonight I ask one thing of you. Listen with the seriousness of a man stepping into a new life. Let every sentence sink below the surface of your awareness. Feel it settle. Feel it anchor. Feel it overwrite the stories fear has told you. If you will allow these truths to take root, you will begin to experience something extraordinary. Financial fear will fade. You will walk differently, speak differently, decide differently. You will notice opportunities you once overlooked. You will move toward them with confidence instead of hesitation. And eventually, you will reach a moment, a single, unmistakable moment, when you realize that fear no longer has a voice in you. It will try to appear, but you will not respond. It will try to whisper, but you will not believe it, because the mind you awaken with will not be the mind you carried into this night. So relax. Breathe deeply. Let your body settle. Let your thoughts loosen. You are entering a night that will rewrite your relationship with money. These hours will teach your subconscious what your conscious mind has forgotten. You are not a victim of fear. You are the master of faith. Sleep now and wake without fear. I have long observed that the greatest poverty known to man is not of coin, but of confidence. The man who walks in fear of money has already surrendered the crown of his own mind. He has allowed an idea, a shadow, to command him as though it were master. Yet no idea can enslave the man who remembers that thought itself is law, and law obeys the thinker who knows his authority. The first truth you must grasp is that money is not a mystery, it is a mirror. It shows in form what already lives in belief. When a man imagines scarcity, the world seems to tighten around him. When he imagines abundance, doors appear where walls once stood. The cause is invisible, yet the effect is as tangible as metal in the hand. A man's wallet never lies. It tells precisely what he has been thinking. I once sat across from a wealthy steel magnate who confessed that his fortune began on a night when his pockets were empty. He had only one possession, a mind trained to obey command. While others counted what they lacked, he counted what he could create. That difference, mental arithmetic of faith instead of fear, separated his destiny from theirs. You must therefore reclaim your dominion over the idea of money. See it not as a force above you, but as a tool beneath you. The mind that fears money serves it. The mind that commands money is served by it. A tool cannot rebel against its craftsman. It has no will of its own. Money moves where direction is clear and purpose is definite. It hesitates only before the trembling hand of indecision. Financial fear is not a sign of prudence. It is a confession of disbelief in one's own power. Fear is a thief wearing the mask of caution. It whispers that security lies in withholding, that safety lies in smallness, yet history proves otherwise. No empire was built by the man who waited for perfect conditions. Security belongs not to the timid, but to the decisive. The moment a man decides, the universe begins to conspire with him. Think of Carnegie, whose courage turned molten iron into fortune. During the panics that destroyed lesser men, he expanded his plants. While others clung to fear, he clung to law. He understood that the rhythm of faith never ceases, even when markets shake. He was rich before he was wealthy, because he first mastered the inner account of thought. You may say, "But I have debts, I have obligations." So did he. Every great fortune was once surrounded by debts. Debt is not danger, it is demand for discipline. It is a summons to organize belief. When the mind answers that summons with confidence, resources appear to match the plan. When it answers with panic, creditors multiply faster than courage. The same condition, seen through fear or faith, becomes ruin or rebirth. Repeat this quietly until it takes root. I govern my mind governs my fortune. Speak it not as hope, but as command. Feel the authority in the words. Each time you affirm it with conviction, the subconscious adjusts its compass toward abundance. The inner machinery of thought begins to attract ideas, contacts, and courage in proportion to your repetition. Faith is the mint where all wealth is struck. Every repetition presses the coin deeper into the metal of your being until its image can never fade. You may not yet hear the ring of prosperity in your voice, but keep striking. Habit will soon imprint belief as permanently as the engraver's steel marks gold. Understand this. The world does not pay for doubt. It pays for definiteness. The laborer who digs with hesitation produces little, but the man who digs with purpose uncovers treasure. The same is true in every field. If you wish for opportunity, show the world your decision. Certainty draws compensation like gravity draws stone. Fear, however, is subtle. It disguises itself as logic. It says, wait until conditions improve. But conditions improve only for the man who improves himself. To postpone action until courage appears is to admit that courage governs you. Yet courage grows by use, not by waiting. Begin where you stand, with whatever resources you possess. Begin boldly, and boldness itself will generate the next resource. Rockefeller once told me that his first act of wealth was not earning $1, but saving one. That decision, small in sum, was monumental in meaning. It declared mastery over desire, command over circumstance. It was an announcement to the subconscious. I am organizer, not victim. The world responded by entrusting him with more to organize. The law is precise. The man who governs a little faithfully will be given much to govern. Many cry that the times are uncertain. Times have always been uncertain. What changes is man's confidence in law. In every era, some men panic while others prosper. The difference lies not in market but in mind. Faith has no season. It grows in every climate. To the fearful, the winter of worry never ends. To the faithful, even the storm carries seed. Let me illustrate with a story of Ford. His engineers insisted his 8-cylinder engine could not be cast in one block. He simply said, produce it anyway. Months passed, failures mounted, yet he never withdrew the order. Faith, repeated long enough, forces matter to yield. The impossible became engine, and engine became empire. That is the pattern. Conviction first, creation second. You may ask, how shall I begin my own reclamation? Begin with watchfulness. Observe how often you speak of lack. Every complaint is a seed of poverty. Uproot it by replacing it with a statement of power. When you catch yourself saying, I cannot afford this, replace it with, I will create the means. Such substitution, practiced daily, rewires the mental currency from debt to credit. Do not seek to crush fear. That only feeds it. Starve it. Speak faith louder, and fear will fade for lack of attention. The subconscious is like soil. It cannot reject a seed, only nourish whichever you plant. Plant faith continually, and even weeds of fear will die for want of sunlight. The gardener who tends to faith need never fear famine. Picture yourself as custodian of a great treasury. Each thought is a coin, each word a note. Spend carelessly and scarcity follows. Spend wisely and wealth circulates. Keep your mental treasury balanced by daily accounting. At the close of each evening ask, what did I deposit today, fear or faith? If the answer is fear, forgive yourself and deposit faith before sleep. The account will grow compound interest through the night. Remember that repetition is not mere ritual, it is repair. You are rebuilding a foundation eroded by years of fearful arithmetic. Every time you affirm abundance, you lay another stone of certainty. Soon the structure will stand firm enough to carry the weight of any fortune. The builder who quits at half height will never see the roof, but the one who lays a single brick nightly will one day own a mansion of peace. Let this truth be engraved upon your understanding. Financial fear is obedience to an illusion. There is no force behind it but habit, and habit can be changed by choice repeated with feeling. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine fear shrinking before the light of your decision. Picture yourself standing taller as it retreats. You are not merely comforting yourself. You are issuing a decree that will echo through your subconscious until it becomes law. There is majesty in this simple fact. Man's mind, when governed by faith, commands every element of his environment. Money, opportunity, health, and circumstance are not masters. They are instruments awaiting leadership. Lead them through thought, and they will follow in action. Refuse to lead, and they will scatter like soldiers without general. Discipline your thought, and your fortune will march in formation. Others will soon see the change before you fully realize it. They will notice calmness where anxiety once lived. They will trust your counsel, sense your steadiness, and align with your ventures. For faith, once trained, radiates silently. It speaks in tone, in gaze, in the slow, sure movement of a man who knows his own direction. This influence is wealth. Before wealth, it draws allies long before it draws profit. Therefore, this night, as you listen, make one firm resolve: to treat every fearful thought as trespasser, every doubtful word as thief. Replace each with its opposite until habit itself becomes guardian of your wealth. In time, you will awaken to find that the once terrifying idea of money now bends to your will like wind to sail. You will no longer react, you will command. And the world, seeing your certainty, will begin to pay you for it. Repeat softly before sleep: money serves me because I serve law. I think abundance, I feel abundance, I attract abundance. Feel it until you sleep, for sleep is the workshop where the mind manufactures tomorrow's reality. Give it only patterns of power, and it will return results beyond calculation. Fear is a phantom. It lives only as long as you believe in its form. Yet men bow before it as though it were substance. Of all fears, the fear of money is the most cunning, for it wears the mask of reason. It whispers in tones that sound prudent, cautious, mature. It tells the dreamer to wait, the builder to delay, the buyer to doubt. It presents itself as wisdom, but its origin is cowardice. Tonight we strip away its disguise. To understand fear, you must see it not as feeling, but as habit. It is the muscle memory of defeat reflex, born from repetition. Each time you imagine loss, you rehearse it. Each time you picture disaster, you teach your nerves to tremble on command. Fear grows not from events, but from mental practice. The man who rehearses danger long enough will flinch even in safety. But the same law that built that habit can dissolve it, for law serves whoever commands it most decisively. Financial fear begins with a lie, that money is power. It is not. It is reflection. Money reflects power, never creates it. When a man believes the reflection is master, he becomes servant. But when he believes himself the origin, reflection obeys. You can see this truth in every age. Those who thought wealth could rule them were ruled. Those who thought from abundance ruled wealth. The line dividing the two is invisible, yet it separates kings from beggars. Picture a man counting his debts at midnight. He calculates with shaking hands, believing numbers hold the verdict of his worth. In truth, the numbers are neutral. His thought about them carries the sentence. Change that thought, and the figures lose their sting. I once knew a merchant who, at the brink of failure, wrote across every ledger page these words: "I will arise." Within a year, he had repaid every creditor. His ledgers were the same, but his inner arithmetic had changed. Fear multiplies by memory. It collects evidence to prove itself real. Each small worry calls forth another, until the mind becomes an accountant of misery. You must stop that arithmetic. Begin each day by counting value, not lack. Write down your resources: strength, skill, faith, will, ideas, allies, inventory, the invisible wealth that no creditor can seize. The act itself reprograms the subconscious, replacing anxiety with direction. The man who counts value commands value. I met once with a clerk whose wages were meager but whose spirit was abundant. He kept a notebook labeled Opportunities Rendered. In it, he recorded every idea he contributed to his employer's success. Within a year, the owner promoted him to partner. The world called it luck. I called it mental bookkeeping. He had learned to see contribution instead of deficiency, and the law rewarded him accordingly. The mind always receives interest on the thoughts it deposits. Fear distorts the scale of time. It exaggerates tomorrow and shrinks today. It makes the future appear monstrous and the present powerless. Yet the present moment is the only place where wealth can be formed. Faith works in the now. Every great builder began with one definite act, one letter written, one call made, one product improved. Fear says, later. Faith says, now. The world pays only those who answer to now. Are you? Darby once told me that his entire fortune in insurance came from losing faith at a mine. He quit digging 3 feet from gold. That loss burned the lesson into his mind so fiercely that he vowed never again to stop short. Fear taught him perseverance through failure. That is how fear reveals its real nature. It is not enemy but instructor. Once you learn its lesson, it ceases to visit. Each fear conquered leaves behind its own reward, the memory of victory. When you study men who built empires, you will see one common trait. They faced the same conditions as the fearful, but interpreted them differently. Panic to one man was opportunity to another. Depression to one was harvest to another. The difference lay not in event, but in response. Fearless men ask, what can be done? Fearful men ask, what might go wrong? The questions shape the fate. Law answers the question most often repeated, ask wisely. Let me speak plainly. You cannot afford the luxury of worry. Worry is interest paid on debt that may never come due. It drains the strength required for creation. Each hour of worry is an hour stolen from invention, planning, and service. The man who spends his nights in terror of loss will spend his days in slavery to caution. The cure for worry is work, definite, purposeful, enthusiastic work. Worry cannot coexist with motion toward faith. The subconscious is literal. It cannot distinguish between imagination and experience. When you picture bankruptcy, it obeys by rehearsing failure. When you picture prosperity, it obeys by opening channels toward supply. You have trained it through repetition of the wrong picture. Now retrain it through repetition of the right one. Spend a few minutes each night imagining yourself calm before a problem that once caused panic. Feel composure. The subconscious will record the new pattern and replay it automatically in life. Remember this law. Imagination builds identity. Identity directs experience. A man who repeatedly imagines himself victim soon behaves accordingly. But the man who imagines himself commander of circumstance grows naturally into that role. No force in the universe can deny a consistent self-image. This is not arrogance. It is obedience to law. You cannot expect the world to believe in you until your own imagination does. Fear will protest. It will whisper, "You are pretending." Let it. Pretending is the seed of becoming. Every child who learns to walk first pretends he can. Every master first imagines mastery. The only difference between play and faith is persistence. Persist long enough in one direction and the mind ceases to call it play. It calls it truth. What you insist upon becomes what you are. In my years of study, I have seen fear defeated most quickly by clarity. The moment a man defines exactly what he fears, half its power evaporates. Write down your greatest financial fear. Name it. Describe its form. Then challenge it. What evidence supports you? You will find it has none, only memories of emotion. Confronted by reasoned inspection, fear dissolves. It thrives only in vagueness. Precision is its death. One young salesman once came to me, trembling at the thought of approaching wealthy prospects. I told him to visualize each prospect as man, not monument, to see them as equal participants in the same law. Within a month, he returned transformed. He said, "I discovered that fear disappears when I look for how to serve instead of how to impress." That truth will serve you too. Service is the solvent of fear. When your mind is busy helping, it forgets to tremble. Fear feeds on idleness. When the mind drifts, fear enters like dust through open window. Keep yourself at work, physical work, mental work, purposeful thought. Build, plan, write, improve. Inactivity is invitation to worry, but a mind occupied with constructive vision becomes fortress against fear. No enemy can enter the man who is busy creating. The Creator himself works without pause. Follow his example. Understand that fear and faith share the same root expectation. Fear expects loss, faith expects gain. Both draw from the same well. You need not dig another. You need only change what you draw. Expect good with as much intensity as you once expected disaster. Expect payment instead of shortage. Expect growth instead of collapse. The emotion is identical, only its direction differs. Reverse the current, and the same power that enslaved you will enrich you. Let us consider the role of others. Many fears are borrowed. You inherit them from the speech of the timid, from family tradition, from the gloom of the crowd. But no man is obliged to adopt another's limitation. Choose carefully whose words you allow to reach your subconscious. Avoid those who glorify struggle. Seek those who speak of solution. Association colors thought, thought colors fortune. The company of the fearful is contagion. The company of the fearless is cure. When you begin to withdraw attention from fear, some may call you reckless. They will mistake confidence for carelessness. Do not argue. Let results be your reply. The world eventually bows to the man who refuses to tremble. Men once called Edison stubborn fool for attempting electric light. Later they called him genius. Opinions changed. His certainty did not. It is better to be right alone for a season than wrong with the multitude forever. There is another truth I must give you. Fear cannot survive gratitude. The moment you give thanks for what you already possess, the vibration of your mind rises beyond the reach of dread. Practice gratitude daily, not only for wealth, but for capacity to create it. Thank the unseen forces working through your effort. Gratitude completes the circuit of faith. It tells the subconscious, I already have, therefore I can attract more. Lack cannot enter a grateful heart. As faith replaces fear, you will notice changes in your body as well as mind. Breathing deepens, muscles relax, the chest expands instead of tightens, the eyes look forward instead of downward. These are not mere signs of comfort, they are evidence of alignment. The body follows the mind's conviction. Fear contracts, faith expands. Each physical symptom of calm is a declaration of mastery. The world will read it in your face and respond with trust. Repeat now this simple truth until you know it. I withdraw imagination from fear and apply it to fortune. Let it become your new inner command. Whenever anxiety arises, repeat it silently. In time, your mind will obey without prompt. You will find fear shrinking to the size of an insect, while your faith rises like mountain. Habit will shift. Reflex will reverse, and the man who once flinched will stand firm. From this point, every fearful thought must serve as reminder to practice its opposite. When worry whispers, "What if you fail?" Answer, "Then I shall learn success by another path." When it says, "What if you lose?" Reply, "Then I will create more." This dialogue retrains the subconscious to see solution in every shadow. The mind cannot hold two opposing pictures long. It keeps the stronger. Feed the stronger with repetition, and the weaker fades. Soon, others will remark on the change. They will see you calm where others panic. They will note your composed tone in crisis, your measured words in uncertainty. They will call you lucky. But luck is the name men give to law they do not understand. What they see as coincidence is cause and effect made invisible by faith. You need not explain. Let your serenity speak. In time, it will preach louder than sermons. Understand this final secret of fear. It cannot be destroyed by force, only by replacement. To fight it is to feed it attention. To ignore it is to starve it. Every act of faith robs it of breath. Each night that you fall asleep imagining prosperity instead of panic, its strength diminishes. Each morning that you face the day with confidence instead of dread, it grows weaker still. Eventually, it will vanish so completely that you will wonder how you ever believed it real. Repeat now, with full heart, fear has no property in my mind. I am landlord of my thoughts, and only faith may dwell here. Let this be your nightly decree. Write it upon the tablets of your subconscious through repetition. For when the mind accepts this law as truth, all phantoms disappear, and what remains is a man standing calm, resolute, and free from every imagined chain. Faith is not a visitor in the mind. It must become the permanent resident. Most men invite it when convenient, then dismiss it when the weather of life turns rough. They treat it as a guest rather than as ruler. But the man who wishes to conquer financial fear must enthrone faith as his constant companion, not his occasional comfort. For faith, once installed as law, governs every detail of fortune. Think of faith as a great engine within the soul. You have allowed it to rust through neglect. Doubt has corroded its gears. Fear has clogged its wheels. Tonight, we clean and oil that engine until it moves again with smooth precision. The engine itself was never broken. Only your attention drifted. Bring attention back, and the mechanism of faith resumes operation as surely as sunrise resumes after night. Faith, to be effective, must act automatically. You should not have to argue with yourself each time you meet a bill, an opportunity, or a risk. Faith must answer first, without hesitation, without debate. Until then, you are living by experiment, not by law. Law requires no consultation. It acts. When faith reaches that stage within you, fear cannot enter, for fear has no space in an occupied mind. Every conviction begins with repetition. Emotion is the hammer. Affirmation is the blow. Strike long enough and the pattern becomes permanent. Each night that you affirm abundance, you carve deeper grooves in the subconscious. One day, faith will travel those grooves without command, and the mind will respond with automatic certainty. That is the moment of installation, the point at which faith ceases to be effort and becomes nature. You may wonder why repetition holds such power. Because the subconscious does not reason. It records. It cannot argue, but it obeys perfectly. Whatever is repeated with emotion becomes its master copy, and all future actions follow that blueprint. If you repeat fear, you live by fear's design. If you repeat faith, you live by faith's law. There is no middle ground. The subconscious is neutral soil. Plant wisely. I once watched a young preacher, poor in income but rich in belief, announce to his small congregation that he would raise $1 million for a college. They laughed. He smiled, repeated the declaration, and walked away to pray. Within 30 days, one man wrote the check. That preacher was Dr. Frank Gonzalez, and his million came not from the pocket of a stranger but from the persistence of his faith. Repetition had trained his mind to expect results, and expectation is magnetism. Henry Ford practiced the same principle in industry. His engineers failed again and again to build his V8 engine. He repeated one command: build it anyway. Months passed, results none. Still he repeated. His mind was a record playing one law: it can be done. And because law does not contradict itself, the impossible became engine. The world calls that genius. I call it faith installed as mental law. You must write your own decree of abundance and repeat it until your mind accepts it without protest. The words are less important than the conviction behind them. You may say, I attract opportunity because I am opportunity in motion. Or, money flows to me in proportion to my usefulness. Choose your phrase and make it living language. Speak it not as hope but as order. The subconscious responds to authority, not request. Beware of empty affirmations. A cold sentence is counterfeit coin. The subconscious tests the temperature of every thought. If the feeling behind it is weak, it passes through unnoticed. Speak each affirmation until emotion rises. Feel the warmth of conviction. When you feel it, the impression is made. Do not say it 10,000 times coldly. Say it 10 times with fire. Law recognizes passion, not repetition alone. Gratitude is the final signature that seals faith. Each time you affirm abundance, follow with thanks. Gratitude declares ownership. It says to the subconscious, "This is already mine." And what the mind believes it owns, the world must eventually deliver. Gratitude turns wish into possession. Speak your affirmation, then whisper, "Thank you." That whisper is the stamp of completion. Remember, faith and fear cannot coexist. The moment faith becomes law, fear becomes outlaw. You need not chase it away. It vanishes by statute. When light enters, darkness must flee. Each time you affirm your command over money, you increase the light until there is no corner left for fear to hide. Some will ask, "Isn't this self-deception?" I answer, "It is self-direction." You have already deceived yourself by rehearsing fear. Now you direct yourself by rehearsing truth. The man who believes he is doomed acts accordingly. The man who believes he is destined acts differently. The universe does not punish either. It merely mirrors belief. Decide which reflection you desire. When faith is fully installed, you will notice 3 unmistakable signs. First, your speech will change. Doubtful phrases, "I can't," "I hope," "I'll try," will disappear. Second, your body will change. Shoulders straighten, breath deepens, steps quicken. Third, your environment will begin to reorganize itself around your new tone. Opportunities will arrive uninvited, drawn by invisible correspondence. That is not miracle. That is law responding to its own echo. You may test your progress by observation. When an unexpected expense appears, listen to your first thought. If fear still speaks first, faith is not yet law. But if composure answers, there is a way. The installation is nearly complete. Continue until calm becomes reflex. When peace greets every challenge, the mind has accepted its new constitution. I remember a small-town grocer who practiced this nightly. He would close his till, count his coins, and say, "Every cent is a seed. Every seed multiplies." His business grew while larger competitors failed. When I asked how he kept faith during hard times, he replied, "I have repeated prosperity too long to remember poverty." That is installation. That is mastery. The habit of fear forgotten through the habit of faith. Think of your subconscious as a loyal worker who never sleeps. It carries out the orders left on its desk before you retire. Most men leave notes of worry, unpaid bills, imagined losses, desperate arithmetic. Their subconscious labors all night constructing problems. Leave new orders, faith, sufficiency, gratitude. It will build solutions instead. Morning will bring ideas instead of anxiety. Let me offer you an affirmation to practice nightly. My faith is the law of my fortune. Every thought of confidence builds my wealth. Repeat it slowly until it feels like fact. Then sleep upon it. The next day, act as though the world already agrees with you. The combination of mental decree and physical demonstration binds the law into permanence. Do not confuse faith with fantasy. Fantasy daydreams without discipline. Faith imagines with intention. The first dissipates energy, the second directs it. Faith always asks, what step follows this belief, then takes it. Step by step, belief becomes structure. Even a small act, writing a letter, organizing an idea, saving one coin, translates faith from air to earth. Every action reinforces law. Each night's repetition is not mere comfort, it is construction. You are rebuilding the inner architecture of wealth, replacing weak beams of fear with pillars of conviction. The work is invisible but real. You will not notice progress daily, yet the foundation thickens beneath your awareness. And one day, when the winds of circumstance blow, you will feel no shake. The structure stands because faith holds every joint. When you reach that state, money ceases to feel unpredictable. It becomes obedient. It arrives when called, lingers when respected, multiplies when appreciated. You will treat it as partner, not puzzle. You will speak of it with reverence, but never with worship. The man who worships money loses it. The man who respects law keeps it. There is a rhythm to faith once established. It beats like a heart, steady, unseen, life-giving. You need not force it. You need only maintain it. Each night's affirmation is the heartbeat's maintenance. Each morning's calm decision is its pulse. Guard the rhythm. Disruption invites decay. Discipline keeps circulation strong. Repeat after me with deep feeling. I think abundance. I feel abundance. I am abundance. These words may seem simple, yet they contain the formula for all success: thought, feeling, identity. What begins as idea becomes emotion. What becomes emotion becomes nature. The mind always seeks to live up to its strongest image. Choose that image carefully. As your faith grows, others will instinctively recognize it. You will notice new tone in their voice when they speak with you, less doubt, more trust. They will follow your plans readily, invest in your ideas, assist in your ventures. They will not understand why, but law does. Faith radiates authority invisible to the eye but undeniable to the heart. When law rules your mind, repetition continues not from need but from gratitude. You will affirm abundance because it delights you, not because it reassures you. That is true freedom, to speak of wealth not to create it, but to celebrate it. The fear-driven man prays for rescue. The faith-driven man gives thanks for dominion. Be the latter. You will know the work is complete when you can meet uncertainty with a smile. The day a bill arrives and your pulse remains steady, the day a risk appears and your instinct says forward, that is the day faith stands crowned. The inner kingdom will have no more rebels. Every thought will serve its rightful king. From that day, wealth becomes the natural expression of your peace. Now, as you close this lesson, speak once more. My faith is law, my law is abundance. Let it echo in the corridors of your subconscious. Tonight it writes itself upon the metal of your mind. Tomorrow it will ring as coin in your hand. Such is the order of creation. Thought first, form second, always. Install this law, and fortune itself will obey your command. When a man first begins to think correctly about wealth, he discovers that riches have a moral nature. They reward the man who serves greatly and withdraw from the one who serves grudgingly. The law is as fixed as gravity. No man may receive more than he renders in value, and no man can render value in faith and not eventually receive abundance in return. True riches are built upon this unseen balance, this spiritual arithmetic of give and gain. If you would remove financial fear forever, you must first remove the thought that wealth is won by chance. Wealth is the product of law, and law never favors idleness. Service is the currency through which man buys his security. When your mind learns to delight in service, wealth begins to delight in you. The fearful man works for money. The wise man works for mastery. Money follows mastery as shadow follows light. Every act of service releases energy into the invisible bank of life. That energy compounds and returns multiplied. Most men do not believe this because they expect payment instantly. Yet the law of sowing and reaping never fails. It simply waits for its own season. The farmer who doubts the seed before it sprouts would never see harvest. Likewise, the worker who doubts his service before its reward condemns himself to lack. I once asked Charles M. Schwab why he rose from steelworker to the highest chair in Carnegie's empire. He answered, "Because I did not wait to be paid before I gave my best. While others limited their effort to their wage, he expanded his effort to his faith. His mind rehearsed service, not salary." The law of compensation, bound by his confidence, brought wealth in proportion to his giving. What others called fortune was simply faith returning to its source. When you act beyond what is required, you tell the universe that your mind expects expansion. The man who only gives what is demanded announces to law that he believes in limitation. Both receive exactly what they expect. The one reaps pennies, the other abundance. The difference lies not in opportunity, but in attitude. Money follows the trail of generosity, not the echo of complaint. You must train yourself to view service not as burden, but as blessing. Each moment of work done with cheerful spirit deposits invisible coin into your future. You may not yet see its return, but the account grows nonetheless. The invisible pays interest to the visible. Every task performed willingly strengthens the habit of faith. The habit of faith attracts the habit of wealth. There is no separation. Imagine two men laboring at the same bench. One grumbles, cursing the work, thinking only of the clock. The other performs with attention, enthusiasm, gratitude. To the eye they seem equal. To law they are worlds apart. The second is magnetizing opportunity even as he works. The first is pushing it away with every word of resentment. Faith multiplies effort. Fear discounts it. Both are paid according to their thought long before the paycheck arrives. There exists what I call the divine credit system. Every act of service, every moment of honest intention, every improvement made without demand is recorded in this unseen ledger. Interest accrues in ways you cannot predict, through friendships, ideas, promotions, or fortunate chance. The man who trusts this law walks serenely, for he knows that no good deed perishes unrecognized. Faith keeps his balance always in surplus. One of the wealthiest store owners I knew began as a janitor. He told me his secret. I decided that the floor I scrubbed would reflect my mind. If the floor shone, my thoughts were polished. If it dulled, I had dulled my ambition. His excellence attracted promotion after promotion until the title on his door matched the standard in his mind. Every broom stroke was a prayer of prosperity, every clean tile a testament to faith. If you fear loss, serve more. If you fear shortage, give more. Service reverses the current of fear. It tells the subconscious that supply is abundant, that there is always more to share. The fearful man clings, the faithful man circulates. Circulation keeps wealth alive, stagnation suffocates it. To hoard is to declare distrust in the law of return. To give with intelligence is to affirm mastery over it. There is no magic in this, only order. When you give beyond measure, you enlarge the channels through which good may flow back. When you give grudgingly, you narrow them. The universe operates on measurement of spirit, not coin. A small act rendered with full faith counts greater than a fortune given in fear. Therefore, never despise the humble opportunity to serve. It may be the hinge upon which your next door of abundance swings open. I have known many men who sought quick gain through cunning and deceit. Their success shone briefly, then vanished like smoke. The law of compensation eventually balances every account. No man cheats the universe. He only cheats himself. Honest service multiplies quietly, invisibly, but endlessly. When others sleep, it still accumulates. When others panic, it still compounds. It is the one investment that never fails. You may say, "But I have given much and received little." Perhaps you have given with fear. Service given grudgingly counts only in effort, not in faith. The soil of the subconscious requires joy to germinate. Plant resentment, and the harvest will mirror it. Plant enthusiasm, and the crop will surprise you. Give as though you are wealthy already, and wealth will hasten to confirm it. Let me show you a simple test. Tomorrow, perform one act of service unseen and unrewarded, an act no one can praise you for. Do it in secret and bless the one who benefits. Then observe how you feel. You will notice a warmth within, a quiet satisfaction that lingers. That feeling is proof that faith has been exercised. Each such act stretches the muscle of abundance. Use it daily, and the habit of generosity will replace the habit of fear. Money is obedient, but it respects order. A disordered life repels it, as surely as stench repels fragrance. Keep your surroundings clean, your accounts in balance, your word reliable. Law mirrors precision. When your affairs are tidy, the universe entrusts you with greater resources. Neglect breeds distrust. Wealth loves organization because organization is the outer sign of inner control. Rockefeller, who dealt with millions, balanced his ledgers to the penny. He said, "I will not permit disorder to reign over my smallest coin." His practice was spiritual discipline, not mere accounting. He understood that exactness in little things attracts largeness in others. When you master the small, the large presents itself willingly. Begin with your daily expenditures, record them, bless them, know their purpose. This habit alone will calm 90% of financial fear. Order of mind must precede order of money. Begin each morning by setting mental house in shape. Declare your purpose for the day. Visualize your work accomplished with ease. Thank the law for another opportunity to serve. Then proceed without haste. Haste is the child of fear. Precision is the child of faith. When your movements are deliberate, your results are durable. The world trusts the man who moves with purpose, not panic. You will soon discover that service and order are the parents of self-respect. When you know that your work is honest, your accounts correct, your effort beyond expectation, fear has no argument left. The conscience itself becomes ally. Sleep returns. Decisions grow clear. The mind that serves faithfully by day rests peacefully by night.